Hello, everybody. If you want to skip right to the interview, go right to 8 minutes. Thanks. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 26 of the VonDubCast. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. Lots of things to be thankful for these days. I'm very thankful for this podcast and what it's done for me, and really excited for the episode today. It's my first episode having somebody on that has a pretty successful podcast in Shawn Newman. Just kind of found him out of the blue on Instagram and saw that he was doing a podcast local to Lloydminster and had some really cool guests on. I don't think I realized when I first reached out to him how big of guests he had on and kind of how successful he was already at it. And it was cool to see someone just a couple steps ahead on this road, and kind of it was fun to ask him questions, compare my notes with his notes of how the first 3 months of his process getting started was. We did it kind of very different ways, but also a lot of similarities. So I really enjoyed sitting down and chatting with him. And I have so many more questions to send him after the fact, just about kind of how he's monetized his podcast. And he's already got advertisers and everything. And I think that was something that I was shying away from off the start. But now 25 podcasts in, I need to start kind of looking at that possibility. I was thinking maybe 50 episodes in was when I wanted to start advertising. But if I wait till 50, I'll be just sitting there with nobody. So I thought I'd maybe bring that up in the intro today of just, if anybody does want to advertise on this podcast, feel free to reach out to me. I have some really big ideas on how to make it successful and make sure that you would get your money's worth out of it. And it doesn't have to be big numbers, or anything could be relatively small. I'm starting to put a lot more money into this podcast out of my own money, and my idea to keep things how I want them to work, or I don't even know how to explain it. Just keep things honest, I guess, to myself and to what I want this podcast to be. I'm going to make it so that I do want to get sponsors, but I'm going to make it so that all the money that comes in from sponsors get directly put back into this podcast, into making it better equipment, hiring people to help do video editing and that sort of thing. So then it kind of keeps it honest. It's not just me doing it to try and make a buck. I'm still just trying to make this podcast better in any way, shape, or form. But I'm finding that money is a big area that gates how much you can do right off the start. I'm sure as it grows and as you get more success, the money is less important on some of those fronts. But yeah, that's kind of my idea on that. And so I thought I'd throw it out there, see if anybody wants to come on board with the VonDubCast. My biggest areas right now people are listening, obviously Slave Lake, Edmonton, and Calgary. So if you're based in any of those three places, I have a pretty decent chunk of people listening. And I think with podcasts, advertising goes a lot further because people are actually engaged, and I'm never going to take on a sponsorship that I don't actually believe in, and I would speak to and really make it worth their while to advertise with this podcast, because I would do everything in my power to articulate to the listeners exactly why I believe in it and why they should support it. Kind of like I do with the past guests, Dog Island and Mommy Chin Chin Cookies are two of the ones that I see. Anytime I see something they're doing good, I always want to spread the love and make sure you guys are hearing about it, because I want them to be successful. Anybody that comes on here, I want it to be a springboard so that they get something out of it as well, other than just a good conversation and a good bullshit. So yeah. Little sober October update. It's been a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. I mean, just all those little things, whether it's because I kind of chose so many things, maybe in retrospect, maybe I should have just picked a couple things to do and not taken away all my vices and all my little treats, because it's getting pretty hard. I know I didn't realize how much I leaned on some of these things to help me get through when times get tough, when work's stressful and the podcast is stressful. It's a bit tough not to have things to go back to, but it's only 1 month. I'm powering through, but I think I got to be honest with you guys, I am struggling a bit with it, and I think it's a little bit silly to pretend it's all roses and just putting up the daily catch-up posts on Instagram of what I'm all doing. Those things kind of make it seem like everything's just running smooth, but it is quite tough. And I think I'll have a little podcast at the end of the month, a recap, just kind of go over maybe the finer details of that. But it is tough. I'm trying to stick through it just because I've agreed to it, and that's I want to keep my word, because accountability is a big piece of what I preach. And if I can't do it, why can I expect people to listen to me? So yeah, just wanted a little check-in on that. If anybody else is doing something for this month, my heart goes out to you. Whatever it is, I know big or small, change is not easy ever. So keep at it, keep it up. It's worth it in the end. The skills you gain by learning self-control and other ways to go finding more natural and healthy paths is always an admirable goal. So yeah, that's kind of my little sober October, optimized October update. And what else I got to say? Right, like always. need everybody's help to, if you are listening to this, follow my social medias. And if you have a friend that you can pass this podcast on to, I've gotten some really nice messages from people that I don't even know and just say, hey, I got this podcast recommended to me by someone from Slave Lake, and I just was driving and need some listening. I really enjoyed it. And those mean a lot. I mean, they all mean a lot, but just getting those ones where I know it's somebody that passed the podcast along, it's really, really cool to see people that don't know me reaching out. So yeah, if you could keep spreading the word, and even if it's just to follow on Instagram or on Twitter, it really helps. I'm trying to use those Instagram highlights or whatever to kind of make it useful to follow. There's ideas for podcasts. If you ever go on a road trip, I have my life changers there. I got to get better at supporting them, but it'll just be podcasts that really impacted me. And if you're ever, going on a road trip and you want some good ones, you can look there for a couple to download before you go. There's a couple other things, past guests that have been on. If they have, like if Dog Island has a new beer, I'll share some of theirs and then put it in there. Things like that. So yeah, if you could follow the social medias, like I said, that'd be a huge help. And, yeah, I think that's all I got to cover. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I had a ton of fun sitting down with Shawn. I had so many topics I didn't get to. He's a big Oiler fan. We didn't really get to talk much hockey and all that kind of stuff, but just the topic of podcast kind of took us a long way. But I'm sure he'll be on again in the future. And definitely go check out his episodes. The Ron McLean episode was unbelievable. Ron McLean's such a cool guy, and it was a really good interview. Shawn did an amazing job. One of my personal favorites, Tanner Bozer. He's a heavyweight UFC fighter. I really enjoyed that episode. Tanner, I've listened to quite a few interviews with him, and a lot of times he doesn't open up because people are trying to ask kind of silly questions. But I found that Shawn really got down to the nitty gritty of who Tanner was, and I really enjoyed that episode. And just so many others, Jay Onright and Paul Bissonnette, Marty McSorley, Gene Principe, Scotty Hartnell. I think he had a billionaire on there at one point. I think he had Holtby, who's now in the Oilers divisions. Yay. Anyways, just tons and tons of amazing guests. Like I can't tell you enough. Just go to his podcast, take a scroll through, find it. I guarantee you'll find at least one or two guests that pique your interest and give him a chance, because I think he's doing really well. He's already about 120 episodes in, and he's just killing it. He's got a really great setup. His studio looks awesome. He's really kind of where I want to be when I'm 2 or 3 years into this. I want to replicate a lot of the things he's doing. So if you want to see what I think this podcast can be, take a look at him. Follow on Instagram, Shaun Newman Podcast on Instagram, and tell him if you do enjoy it, make sure you reach out and tell him that you heard about him here, because that goes a long way for me too. So yeah, I really appreciate that, and hope you guys enjoy the episode. All right. Welcome, Shawn. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is you're the second guy to ask me to come on to blabber on. So I'm looking forward to sitting and shooting the shit.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it too. I just somehow Instagram recommended your podcast page to me, just kind of out of the blue, and I looked into it. Oh, a guy out of Lloyd runs a podcast. Hey, that's right up my alley. Didn't really think too much further of it. I reached right out to you and said, hey, maybe we can hook up. I was good. You looked like, I saw your studio set up and it was gorgeous. I mean, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. I got to ask him a couple questions. You know what I mean? So I just reached out, and then you said yes. And I was really excited to get you on today. So I thought, oh, that was maybe this weekend. So I thought, I'll try and crush a couple episodes this week before I get on with you. And I'm seeing Ron McLean and fucking Jay Onred and Tanner Bozer. I was just blown away, but holy man, before we get to all these rock star guests you somehow lucked into, you lucky bastard, and start with, how did you get the idea to start a podcast? What inspired you to start?
So I've loved radio since I was probably like a young guy, right? Mm. But played hockey, through Lloyd, and then out in Ontario and the States and Finland, and just kind of all over the place. And when I was done, I looked into it pretty extensively, maybe do color commentating, maybe start at a radio station, try and work my way up. And all my friends in the business kind of steered me away from it, which was disheartening, I guess. Yeah. But at the time I was like, no, that makes sense, right? No money. You got to be this, you got to be that. And so I never went into it. And then, that was 2011. So you fast forward about 7.5 years. And I heard my first podcast. Obviously, I live in a box or something because I don't know how I hadn't stumbled upon one before that. And was like, man, this is brilliant. Like, I can do this. I mean, anyone can do it if they really want to, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was born in late February or late October of 2018, and my first one was in February 2019. And you know, it's you mentioned guys like Ron McLean and Jay Onrait and guys like that, but I mean, my first guest was a really good friend. My second guest was my father. My third guest was my sound man at the time. Like, I mean, I started off as humble as anyone, and I mean, I've had cool guests on, but the work ain't done. There's a lot to do. I'm still, you know, we were just talking about it. I still work a full-time job, then come home to 3 kids who probably don't see me nearly enough, and hang out with them 110%. And then, you know, late at night after everybody goes to bed, I try and squeeze in what I can at nighttime because that's the only time I got. So.
Yeah, so that's how you find the balance, because that was one of the biggest things I wanted to ask you about, because I found just that I've only been going for 3 months. I just passed the 3-month mark just a couple days ago. And
congratulations! Enjoy the little ones, the little victories.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I found one of the biggest things I'm struggling with so far is that balance. I mean, going into this, I didn't do maybe as much research. I mean, that's silly to say because I was so into podcasts. I listened to thousands of podcasts. When I moved up to GP here, I didn't have any buds up here. So I was just working, going to the gym and then listening to podcasts. It's pretty much all I did. So I had lots of research, but I'd never actually I'd never really looked into what it would take to start my own. I always just thought, if ever I was in a position where I could start my own podcast, I'd have enough money to hire people to figure all the background stuff out, right? That was kind of always the weird thing in my head. And then when I actually jumped into it, I realized how much more work, like the editing and figuring these kind of things out and the little barriers you have to jump across, while also balancing a full-time job and all those things. And then to hear having kids on top of that. So did the preparation time, I think what sounded different from you discussing how you got into your podcast and me, I think from the time I made the decision that I was going to start it to the time I was recording my first episode was maybe 3 weeks. I didn't really think and try and plan because I think I was so scared about it. I think I needed to just jump into it. I forced myself. The first thing I did was
you got to jump. You got to jump, man. You could be 10 years later going, man, I'm really going to get that podcast fired up or whatever you want in life.
Yeah.
You got to make the jump at some point. And we learn best, I think, when our feet are to the fire, right? Like you have to sink or swim, right?
Mm-hmm. So did you find that planning time between that October to the February when it launched, did you have a lot of these things? Did you acquire a lot of people to kind of help you along so you could find that balance? Or was it just kind of doing the due diligence and figuring it out yourself?
Don't let the October to February act like for 5 or 6 months I sat around and like planned my great escape. I didn't. I was still working full time. You know, back then, 2018, we had 2 young kids, right? I got, like I say, 3 kids under 4. So the reason there was a delay was this is a new studio, but at the time. The first guy I had on, actually, Ken Rutherford and me, talked a lot about it, that I wanted to have a place that I could hang my hat. That if you came in, you'd be like, man, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like this has a feel to it. Like you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, looking back on that though, it took probably 5 months to build something similar to what you're kind of seeing in the background right now. Right. But it was in an old house, the basement. There was a renter upstairs. Yeah. If you came out at 8:00 at night on a Saturday or a Sunday or whenever, you might have thought I was leading you to the backwoods. Like it was kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why there was the gap of time. Is in the beginning I was doing the prep work for the feeling, not figuring out, man, all the stuff you're talking about. There's just How can you explain to somebody who just flicks it on their phone and turns it on and starts listening and goes, wow, this is awesome. Like you should do this all the time. All of us should. And it's like, well, all of us can, but there's a lot of work to it. And you're talking exactly about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, and that balance is just something you're going to find and you're going to get better at and that was my biggest goal, was something I'd listened to so many podcasts and something I'd heard everyone say on all these big podcasts, all these guys that I really respected was, man, I wish I started sooner. You know, anybody that starts, the first couple episodes are going to suck and you're going to get better, but I wish I would have just got those ones out of the way earlier. And that was kind of a nice thing of jumping into it so quick without planning on how to maybe get it out and grow it off the start. I just made the plan of I'm just going to make the best content I can for the first 25, 50 episodes. And then I should I'll take a look back, take a step back at that point, see, am I happy with where it is? Do I still need to get better? Or is this the time where I'm happy to bring this product and try and grab some sponsors and try and take this to the next level, really blow it up at that point? And that's kind of what it is. But I think that gave me that little bit of extra freedom where I wasn't worried about a million people hearing it. I just wanted to concentrate for the time I'm in this chair talking to you is the best that I can give. And I feel like that was a very freeing aspect to it, but also it kind of set me up for failure because I think if I would have had more of a balanced mindset of not just so much concentrating on the content, I wouldn't have tripped over so many barriers and things that I should have foreseen and maybe done a little bit more research of things I would have fallen into. But like you say, that's the way you find out and that's the way you learn, right? It's just going in, tripping face first over that shit.
You gotta experience it, man. Like you sit there and you look at your past like failures and like all the obstacles you ran into, but I mean that's part of growing. Until you run into the obstacles, you don't know they're there. You can't know they're there, right? Yeah. I'm still making major mistakes, and I'm 118 plus. I've started doing the archive episodes, so it's like 122. Wow. I look at it. I subscribe to the 10,000 hour rule thought process, right? Yeah. That in order to be very good and the best maybe at your craft, you have to do it a lot. I'm a hockey player. I mean, you don't get better by sitting on the couch, right? Like you got to be out talking to people. And another thing that I do is, I talk out my thoughts, which is some people find uncomfortable because I'll say something and I don't actually mean half of it. I'm saying it to try and get it out of my brain. Yeah. So then we can sit there and have the conversation like we're doing right now. But to listen to you just jumping in and don't beat yourself up for, like I tell you what, right at the very beginning, I think it was like episode like 12 maybe. I used to do a little bit of a monologue at the start, right? Talk about a couple things going on in Lloyd and whatever. Yeah. And if I got 10 seconds in and screwed up, I'd stop and redo it. Yeah. And then if it was 30 seconds in, sometimes I'd stop, sometimes I'd just keep going and roll with it, right? One time I did it like 3 times and forgot to edit that out, and I released that, right? Yeah. So it's like literally me swearing at the start going, fuck, come on, if I can figure it out here. Yeah. And, look back on it. It's such a harmless mistake. Most of the people that heard it actually thought that their app was rewinding, right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I mean, right? Like, when you're listening,
more endearing than anything when you let
right. It keeps it real. I mean, look at our media today. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on. If you go watch, like all you got to do is hop on your Twitter app, right? And you see the videos. It's like everything's doctored for me and you. And then if you like it, you get more stuff coming to you. And it's one of the things I love about podcasts, especially unfiltered, unedited podcasts where you get to hear the conversation. Right? Is you don't get led to where they think that you need to go. You get led wherever you need to go. It's like a good book. Like every book, no matter how good or bad it is, means something to each different individual just because of where they're at in life or how the guy writes it or girl writes it, right? So I think a good podcast, a good conversation like you're doing is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the biggest reasons I started this podcast, Shawn, was actually seeing that, especially it was made very obvious during COVID because I had seen that in the past and I was listening to podcasts all the time. So it's the most honest, unedited, unfiltered, nobody in the background telling you what to say kind of conversations. And that's what you get used to, that level of honesty. And then you turn on your TV and you go to watch anything on NBC and it's just so packaged and trying to lead you. It turns you right off of it, right? Like humans are very attuned to honesty and phoniness, right? And you can hear it from a mile away.
Immediately.
Yeah, immediately. And I didn't watch much TV. Like honestly, when I moved to Grand Prairie, I pretty much stopped. Other than hockey and MMA and that type of stuff, my TV was off, and I was listening to podcasts or watching podcasts on YouTube. That's all I'd watch, right? But then when COVID hit, I have employees. I have to do my part, and I wanted to, at least I would leave the news on in my office and just watching it just be absolutely trash and just leading people to what you hear just so dishonest and so disingenuous, maybe more so than dishonest. And it was just such a heartbreaking thing just to see. And okay, I'll try a different channel, but every channel, right? You can't. It used to be, I got to find one, but every channel's that, right? It might be a different flavor or leading you to a different spot, but they're still leading you, right? Like it was so much, and it just kind of was that last straw where, man, I think there's so much pressure, but I think that's what's so special about podcasts and why they're growing so quickly, Shawn, is because of that fact. Exactly. People are fed up with that disingenuous bullshit. They want that honesty. They want that truth, right? They want that unedited. They want you messing up in the intro and swearing at yourself, right? That's more real than anything you get anywhere else. And you can tailor it to whatever kind of audience you want, right? You turn on the TV and you don't know who you're going to grab, so they try and make it as wide of a net as they possible. So anybody that flips on a TV is going to watch it, right? That's their goal. But a podcast can be as specific. If a guy tunes in and listens to my or your podcast and it doesn't line up with them, there's a million more podcasts that are just as honest and just as cutting edge that they could find that is more down to their lane. But I find if somebody gives it a chance and they listen to, you can't sit there for 3 hours or 2 hours or even an hour and listen to someone in depth on an honest conversation and not connect on at least one or two things, right? And I feel like that's what's so special and keeps people coming back for more and really drags them along. And I think that's what's so cool to me, to be able to do that for other people, because it was such a powerful experience for me to find podcasting and what it meant to me. I'm so excited for that to be, down the road, do that for somebody else, right?
Well, just think I'm from small town Saskatchewan. You're from relatively small town Alberta.
Yeah.
Growing up, when we used to go to Edmonton, you used to love to go to Edmonton because then you could get the Edmonton radio stations, right? And then you fast forward a bit and you get Sirius satellite radio. Now you can get radio stations from all over the world.
Yeah.
But you're still only getting 100 and some channels. And I know that's ridiculous to even say because it's 100 and some channels. But I mean, you can't have everyone on there, right? And then you fast forward again. And now literally anyone in the world you want to listen to can start a podcast, and it can be on your phone tomorrow. And you can sit and listen to them. And if you like, you always think of the big names, right? Like you had to go into a big city to listen to the best talent. Well, now you can be in the smallest, tiniest Sask town. We'll use Saskatchewan. We'll pick on my home province. There's a lot of small towns there. And you can listen to any of the best in the business and any business, because everybody's got a podcast now. It's almost hurts your brain how many podcasts have come out. And especially since COVID, right? Everybody's sitting around home. Everyone's like, well, we got to figure something out.
Exactly. And not only that, not only just the people too, but topics. If you're really into some niche thing, flamenco guitar, you can find 100 podcasts on flamenco guitar if you want, right? And it's in depth, and it's something that, I feel like a lot of times when people really connect with something, if there's not people around them that they can share it with, if you're really into hockey, but you're living down in Florida and not everyone's into hockey, that's kind of a tough time, but you can turn on Spittin' Chicklets and feel like you just had the best hockey conversation with, ex-NHL players, and you're back in that. But that goes for everything, whatever you're into, right? And they're growing and growing, and we're saturating every little niche market you can have. And then there's a mixture. Maybe you're into, there's probably a million people out there that are into hockey, MMA, podcasting, video game, like all those things that I almost line up with identical. There's got to be millions of people around the world that are into those things too. And maybe not all, all 10 of my top 10, but maybe 3 or 4 of my top 10 line up. And that's a lot, right?
Well, my favorite podcast, and I'm sure I'm in a majority, right, is Joe Rogan.
Of course. Me too.
That was the first one I ever listened to. And here's the crazy thing. And I model my podcast. I try to, after what Joe's done, in a sense that it's raw, unedited, whatever.
Yeah.
But I really think he has 3 things that he does. He has MMA fighters, which I don't care about. Like, I personally don't care about. Like, I love watching the fights, but I'm not going like who climbed the standings and like whatever. I actually got made fun of for the Tanner Bozer interview.
Oh, I know. I listened to it. Was a little painful, not going to lie. I was like, oh man, I can tell that you love the sport, but not to that level. Because I think some of those questions, I was just, man, I wish I could be in that interview with you. I was so jealous.
Well, and I've got made fun of because I've done a model from Italy, right? Wow. And I got made fun of for that one too. And I'm like, well, listen, I'm not about sticking in my bubble. I want to learn and grow and get better.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's got an interesting story.
Yes.
And Tanner Boser is a hell of a story. Just because I can't ask the right MMA question doesn't make it right? Like, it's a fun conversation. I'm sure I made him laugh a few times when he's like,
for sure. But I've listened to.
In fairness, I let it off before we started recording. I said, "Listen, Tanner, I know jack shit about MMA fighting. Let's leave it at that, and let's just have some fun." And he started laughing. He's like, "All right, let's roll." Right.
And what's so funny, Shawn, is that's the best Tanner Boser interview I've ever heard, because so much of the time guys try to get really nitty gritty with the MMA questions with him. And just something I noticed is that's not the type of guy, he's a down-home Berta boy. He wants to, talk about crushing beers and shit. And when you brought it to that level, he was up and some of the questions, even though they were, maybe some of the questions to a really deep MMA head like myself was kind of like, oh, you asked that.
You can say it.
Yeah, but you could see him laugh, and he answered them, and he was happy to answer those type of questions. Where if it was an MMA journalist asking him, "Hey, fuck you, why are you even asking that?" But he was having so much fun with you that it was such a cool experience. I loved listening to it. I was just I was blown away by it, and I think that's what's special about it. I think when you try and concentrate on just staying in your lane or trying to jump into some other lane, right? You were having somebody on, but you kept it in your style, and I thought that was awesome. I really enjoyed that one. That was one of my favorites.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Going back to it though, so Joe Rogan does MMA, he does comedians, and he does interesting fucking people.
Yeah.
About today's topics. Yeah. And his interesting people are fantastic. That's why he is, in my opinion, the best podcast out there. That's why when I have free time and I'm like, and I kind of wanted something to listen to. Mm-hmm. For me, that's what I turn to, because I want to learn, but I want to be entertained. And he has a very good way of doing it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, I don't know. You talk about podcasts. I went to a podcast summit last summer. So a bunch of podcasters that got together. It was super cool. It's something you should definitely do. I'd love to do it again, except, COVID's kind of got everything kind of on lockdown.
Yeah.
But I met there people who did like ghost stories and stuff on a podcast, and it was like crazy popular. Yeah. Like, I was just like, who's downloading that? But I downloaded one just to see it. I'm like, I could see how you could get into this, right? Like, they're talented. They got all these different voices and people coming in to like act on it and stuff. Yeah. Like, it was super cool. So once again, I'm getting off track here, but like podcasting, I mean, like anything you want, you search it, you can find it.
Mm-hmm. And the flip side of that coin is anything you want, you can search and find it. But anything that you want to create, you have the complete freedom with no one looking
to do whatever you want,
to create whatever you want, right? And I think that's what's so special. Because I think that was something that was echoed and not fully utilized first when YouTube came out. I think that was the first inkling of kind of what podcasting has grown into and being the dominant medium for people just to explore whatever topic they want, because I think it's a little more user friendly. I think starting a YouTube channel is completely terrifying to 99% of the public, because me and you started our podcast, and how the technological hurdles you have to go over and that's not that complicated, right? Like, if I was more of a tech-minded guy, I don't think I'd have that much trouble, but it's not my forte. But you ranked it up to video editing and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's where you started to see it, of these kids that are passionate about, a certain video game. I was talking to somebody about video games the other day, actually, a hockey player from Slave, TJ Foss, who played for the Oil Kings and stuff.
Okay.
Comes from a real salt of the earth guy. Really, really liked him. I think if you want to check out an episode of the podcast, you'd really like that one. But we're discussing video games, and you see these people where, when I was growing up, if I was playing video, my dad was always, what are you playing that no friendo for? And just, anytime he caught me playing my Game Boy or something, I was getting shit, because he wanted me to be outside and playing hockey and all that. And I love that he did that. But you see these kids where their parents are worried that they're not going to be able to find anything, because why are you focused on this one game? You can't love it that much. That's not going to ever, amount to anything. But now you see these people that are playing,
making millions of dollars,
making millions of dollars, but playing a game from 1995, Super Mario 64. There's probably thousands of I bet you if you turn on Twitch right now, there'd be 1,000 people streaming a game from like 1996, whenever Super Mario 64 came out. And it's crazy to watch these people. I bet you there's people in 95 yelling at their kids saying, that's never going to amount to that. There's nothing with that you can take. But now there's all these avenues where you can be passionate about literally anything in the world, and you can make a living out of it, or make something creative out of it. And that's just such a cool idea to see. It's just about people waking up to that fact.
I just don't get watching somebody else play a video game. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. I don't want to get it. I'm like, I want to play the video game. Yeah. Like, I was that kid that was like, no, I want the controller. Like, I think I can get past this level, right? Oh, I got to take a turn. F my life. But like now kids are literally watching on these channels, somebody like commentating their gameplay.
Yeah. And it's billions of dollars in that industry, and you see all these people doing it. But I think it taps into the same thing, Shawn, of the podcast. I think it's that honesty. I think if you're a kid growing up and your options of what you can watch it, on TV and all this stuff, you're already tied into that one-to-one individual. You want to get the art that somebody's putting out without having it diluted by, agents and corporations and all that. So they're already on YouTube, and then they're passionate with these video games. They have fun with them, but now they can find a personality that they really connect with, right? Just like sitting there with a podcast. If you sit and listen to Joe Rogan for 3 hours, you're going to connect with them a few things. You watch somebody play a video game. Usually what gets them into it is they like the game itself, and they just want to find somebody that's half decent at the game to watch it. And usually what helps out is the humor or something. They usually bring one or two things to it, right?
Are you telling me you sit and watch the video games? Is that what you're telling me?
I've watched a ton of video games in my day. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm one of those nerds. That's the thing, Shawn. I grew up in Slave Lake, and I played hockey and I did all that stuff, but I was a huge nerd at heart. But that wasn't cool, so I locked that shit down. Didn't tell anybody.
Let me be very, very, very clear. I am a nerd at heart. I still don't understand why I play a video game.
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain to you. I'm trying to put it in terms, because I think that's a lot of people out there. I'd say you're probably in the majority. I think the amount of people that understand that on a deep level of what that is, and the people that are just like you that say, I will never understand that. I think there's probably more on your side of that fence than mine, right? But I think this is why I'm trying to put it in terms. I think what draws people in is just the love of that game, and then they find something. Usually a streamer is either funny, really angry. There's kind of a whole team of guys. I was never really drawn to this, but some people just like people getting mad and raging out and throwing their control. I felt, or they're insightful. There's always something else that goes with them. And when you sit with somebody for hours watching a video game, you pick up on that, and you start to, now this person leaves that video game and goes to play another one, and these people will follow even to a video game they don't even play, or they don't even know about. It's because they get attached to that person, and it's more so about, and the communities that build around them. That's where I kind of drew my line. I never really got too far into the communities and the chats and all that, but I know that they do, and it's kind of cool. I'm almost on that middle edge. I'm not fully into that scene, and I don't fully get it, but I've dipped my toes in the water enough to kind of gather an understanding.
It says a lot about human beings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Like we're all just searching for that social connection. Heck, I mean, one of the rules I had at the very beginning of the podcast, which I've now broken too many times to count.
Yeah.
But up until COVID, my rule was I wouldn't interview anyone unless it was across the table. So face to face, because I think it's something that's quickly becoming a lost art form. We just, like everything's behind a screen now, right?
Yeah.
And there's a difference between talking like this, which is still way better than talking over the phone, where, if we were to do this interview over the phone, which I've had to do now, Jay Onrait was over the phone, right? And it's not that it's bad, but you can't catch any facial expression. You can't see what the guy's doing. You can't see how he reacts, right? Body language is such a huge part in conversation, but when you're sitting across from somebody and you get to see their interaction and how they lean in or lean out, or all the little intricacies that go into our conversation, it's cool. But we're all just, you go back to watching a video game. When you talk about it, what's interesting to me is that, just searching for that connection, right? You're searching for somebody you enjoy. And then once you find somebody you enjoy, there's a community surrounding it, which is hilarious. But I don't mean hilarious in a bad way, just like we go to such extreme lengths to be included and be in something.
To find a community, of course.
That's right.
And that's what podcasts are. That's what they are. It's all in the same feed of it. And it's about building communities, but you never see people building communities around network TV shows, really, or any of the. Sometimes they grow to a certain, Game of Thrones probably was throw some shade at that point, but when it's not coming from one person, when it's diluted,
don't speak badly about Game of Thrones.
That's what I'm saying.
Except for the final season.
You're up to the final season?
Oh. No, I'm done. The Game of Thrones.
You're done?
The Game of Thrones final season was it can just disappear from time for me. It wasn't great.
I agree. And not to be one of those full on nerds, but I read the books first before the TV show came out.
Nice.
Yeah, no, and completely randomly, Shawn. I was walking through Walmart. I was probably in
I must have been maybe junior high, high school. I was walking through Walmart and Slave, because when we got Walmart and Slave, that was a big deal, right? That was where we went every weekend for a big party, right? And I just saw this book, Game of Thrones, whatever, grabbed it, had a cool, it had Sean Bean on the front in the throne.
Oh yeah.
It was coming to TV, and I think that was or maybe it was just the throne. Anyway, something caught my eye, and I brought it, and I just read, holy shit, this is pretty good, right? And lots of nudity, lots of, sex scenes in the book and all that. I was all over it, lots of war, lots of, it had everything. And then when the TV show came out, I was just blown away and at how well they had done with it. And I was just so excited. And then they got to that last season where it really deviates from the books. And I was really torn because I love the book so much. And I've been waiting for this. He's been writing it for like 9 years now. It's been ridiculous. So I'm putting all this time into waiting for it. And I'm doing this decision in my head of, do I watch the show and they said they were going to make it slightly different on the show toward the books so that they wouldn't ruin the books. But like, do I waste it? Do I get it spoiled for me in the books by watching the season? Oh, but I can't not watch this TV show. And then for it to be so disappointing, I was so mad at myself for not waiting for him to write that stupid book. And I mean, less so now that he still hasn't released it. It's been another.
You can't get mad at yourself for that. Like that was like the most anticipated season of any show, I think, known to man. Maybe, my wife will argue Friends or something like that, right? Yeah. But like, I could be wrong, but I just feel like they rushed it. They could have had that same ending if they would have extended it over one more season and just shown the arc of, I don't want to ruin it for people. But then again, the show has been out for so long that if you haven't seen Game of Thrones by now, stop the podcast and do something with your life. But like Daenerys at the end, right? If they would have taken that story arc for a full season and like kind of slowly develop that, mm-hmm. I think it would have been an easier pill to swallow. But like, it was like all of a sudden just one, and all of a sudden that's what's going to happen. You're like,
I know.
But that isn't how the show's ran the entire time. The entire time she's been, regardless of what her bloodline is, she's been good. So I didn't get it. I don't think anybody got it. Somewhere out there, someone got it, but
and that's the thing. And in the books, they do a lot more hinting towards that, and they set it up a lot nicer, right? Like it never gets to that culmination because the book still hasn't been released. But there's so much more setup, and there's a little bit of it. You'd see it and I feel like when I would see it in the TV show, I'd be like, oh, they're finally hinting, because I would see that a lot in the books, and they're finally hinting at it. But I think exactly it was rushed because I think it was either the writers or the directors. There was two guys, and they got they got a deal to do a TV show or something, and maybe it's The Mandalorian or something with Star Wars. Some Disney contract came up, and they knew they had to do it, so they rushed that last season to get it out to get this big, huge paycheck. And I put my money on that's exactly why it came out so rushed and so not what it felt like for the prior 8 seasons or whatever.
The 8 seasons or 7 seasons prior to it ran for 8, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, fucking money. Like, I mean, it's just. If you're the guy, sticking on movies, TV, mm-hmm. I'm a Batman guy. So I am Christopher Nolan, mm-hmm. hardcore. Seen Tenet. I thought it was awesome. My wife squirmed and hated it.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's to be truthful, you want to talk about nerd? I've seen it. I've seen it twice. The first time was it's so fast paced, so much going on. You're trying to like figure out what's going on. You don't fully understand what's going on until like an hour and a half in. Like it's just, it hurts my brain even to think about it that I had to go watch it a second time. Anyways, going back to this, a guy or a group that has so impressed me. And the reason I bring up Batman is because I'm a Batman guy. Like Christopher Nolan, when he made the Batman trilogy, was like, it was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And then Marvel comes out and they do their universe, right? And as they're doing it, I've had this argument with discussion with so many people that why wouldn't DC just follow the same thing? Like the recipe is there.
Yeah.
Start out and build your characters and have a 20-year plan and just slowly build. No, you're not gonna have Justice League come out and compete with Avengers. Who gives a shit? You're about making money and having something that's gonna last a long time. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's just sitting there, and instead DC comes out and they just throw
every character into one show. They introduce characters with one little Easter egg at the end. Like it was done.
It's so terrible. Cool. It's terrible, right? And I'm not, absolutely. And you go, so as fans, you're like, Like, why don't, like, somebody just needs to be at the helm of that and say, listen,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is all going to work out, but if we do the work here for the next 20 years, we have a great storyline. I mean, geez, like the end of Avengers Endgame, not to get too corny, almost makes you emotional. Made me emotional when all the people come out. You're like, well,
I cried like a baby about the 3 first times I watched number 2, but probably both of the last Avengers. I cried like a baby. I'll say it. I don't care.
Well, I mean, it's just like you've invested. You want to talk about investing in something. I'm not even a Marvel guy. Like I didn't before these movies, Iron Man, yeah, sure, whatever. I was a Hulk guy. I liked Hulk. Yeah. And the movies are, a lot of Iron Man, a lot of Captain America. 2 characters I'd never followed. And now, how much do you know about those 2 guys? And how awesome were they? And how sad are you that frickin' Robert Downey Jr. is out? You're like, frick, just find a way to like bring him back in some way.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Magic.
That's right. Just he somehow made it back in a third universe, right? Like, but I don't know why everyone can't see what they've done there. They just they created a plan, and they didn't rush it. They built it up, and as they built it, they just grabbed a following and kept moving and moving. And then at the end, I mean, who can compete with that in a superhero style movie? Like. Even the new Batman, I mean, it's going to be great. It looks like it's going to be awesome. But, I mean, you're competing with, what is it? Is it 5 superheroes? Hulk, Captain America, Thor.
Black Panther.
Black Widow, Falcon. Like, I mean, Spider-Man came in at the end. That's 7 right there. Yeah. Like, Doctor Strange is 8. Like, the list goes on. Yeah. Like, they had like 12 superheroes at the end. It doesn't matter how good one is anymore. They've shown you that if you build it and build 12, you have $1 billion movie.
It's like a podcast versus a TV show, right? It's so much more spread out. You have so much more to do with it. You get so much more personality, right? It's like comparing a 3-hour podcast to a half-hour TV show. It's just not in the same realm of what you can do and what kind of emotional ties you can draw out of it, right? You can do so much more over a 40-hour cinematic, masterpiece. I don't know what to call it. You know what I mean? Like you can do so much more with that, but it takes the not jumping the shark, not going for the easy money right away and letting it build, slowly doing that. And I agree with you. How do people not wake up to that? It seems like such an easy formula to find. But I think even past that is, how do people see Joe Rogan get a couple $100 million deal from Spotify and not realize that that's the future and that this connection-based long form is so much more, but they keep pumping money into these failing TV shows. No, there's no ratings. Like the highest rating TV show on TV at any time doesn't get a tenth of the view that Joe Rogan does.
I'm trying to think right now. On cable, we're not going to use Netflix or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Do you watch a single show that comes on? I don't even know. Is it prime time now? I don't even know what the night is.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Is that not dead?
Sounds like it. And I think every once in a while, there's one show that breaks through that people will find elsewhere. They'll rip it online. They'll stream it. They'll pirate it. Right? Like there's even when they do win, they lose. And it's just so they're holding on to this decaying system and just kicking and screaming, pulling down shit as they swirl down the toilet. It seems like
it's a lot of jobs. It's big money. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for sports, I would have canceled. I still have cable. Like I still have the basic of the basic, so I can watch live sports. That's it.
Yeah.
So when the Stanley Cup Finals is on, which I didn't watch because it was in September and I didn't care, and I'm a hockey guy, right? Like
I know. Right?
We watched the fights. That was the same night, wasn't it?
On Saturday?
When did they win the cup? That wasn't Saturday. Saturday there was a hockey game on. No.
Yeah, there could have been.
Saturday was game 5, whatever. And we ended up watching the UFC fights, which were phenomenal. Like
has been exploding during COVID. Their numbers, they hit records on Saturday that they haven't hit. Like, I'm so excited as a diehard MMA fan. I'm so excited for the growth of it. I get so fired up just thinking about it.
Well, you go back to it though. It's just like our deal, like our families comes to an end here in January, and I won't be renewing cable. I have I watch zero on there, like zero.
Yeah.
And the only thing that drew me back into cable was Game of Thrones. That was the last. I got HBO thrown in 2 years ago so I could watch final season. And now, like, I have no use for it. Everything we do, even with our kids, you know, Netflix, we have Amazon, so we have Amazon Prime. So now you got Netflix and Amazon Prime, like, and then we split Disney Plus with my brother because we all got little kids and they love Disney shows. And so now you got 3 streaming, you know, platforms. What the heck do you need? You don't need anything else. You got everything.
Yeah. And it's funny though, this is maybe putting my tinfoil hat on a little bit here, but it seems like, and this isn't my idea, I've heard this bandied about by a bunch of different people saying it, but it almost seems like the same thing is being created. Like you got Netflix, you got your Disney Plus, you got all these little things. And then eventually in a couple of years, they're going to come out with a bundle where you pay one price, just like cable, where you get all the access to all these different things. And it's going to be the same thing as cable. And they're going to start putting the same restrictions on it. But I was the same way when I moved to Grand Prairie and bought my first house, Shawn. I was dead set. I'm not getting cable. I'm not getting nothing. And I was promptly made aware that was not going to happen. And my dad wanted his satellite. So I was getting satellite. So when he visited, he would have his satellite because that was the key. And my plans changed immediately. And about 2 days after I moved in, I had satellite and that was the goal. But yeah, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have done it. You know, I throw sports on TV every once in a while, but the majority of the time it's me streaming on my computer and just casting the screen onto my TV just for the big screen. But even hockey and stuff, I usually stream it anyway, you know, because then it silences on the commercials. Instead of playing commercial, it just goes silent, which is amazing. So you can just turn on something else on or talk to somebody.
Well, I tell you what, the 2 years ago, the streaming of hockey was okay, but it wasn't where it is now. Now hockey stream any sport streaming it. Is just as good as live television. And I couldn't say that 2 years ago because I remember having the thought. To think about what you just said there, you said you wonder if it's a conspiracy that eventually the Netflix of the world, the Disney, the Prime, will put it in a bundle. You know, I've never thought that thought. To go down that road, if they can make the money work, I could see how it could happen.
Yeah,
but sure. I don't know if they can make the money because all those streaming services have cut out the middleman. Mm-hmm. And are now, instead of you purchasing our product and we'll let you use it for probably a fraction, they get to charge full price now to bring you back into all their old classics and they control it all. Mm-hmm. You think anyone could ever pay Disney enough now to say, hey, listen, we'll take over Disney? I mean, somebody could, and somebody probably will try at some point. Yeah. That's the way the world works. But right now, even in the next 20 years, man, that's going to be a steep order because, I mean, that's a lot of money. And what do they have to gain from doing that?
Yeah. And I think maybe I think I mischaracterized by making the tinfoil hat joke. It's less conspiracy. I think it's more just human nature and business itself because it was an industry that got stale. Right, TV. They stopped innovating. They cast a wide net. They would neuter everything. Any funny jokes they would cut out, and they really neutered it down. And then what did that do? It created opportunity. So what pops up? Netflix, and it kicks them in the dick. Right, it knocks them in the dirt and completely kicks their ass. And then people
Stone Cold stunnered them hard.
Exactly, Stone Cold stunnered them out of nowhere. Right, this mail-in DVD service comes in out of nowhere, RKO, and. But then you see the Disney Pluses and the Hulus and all these other things pop up because they see the success of Netflix. And then eventually it comes to this point where now this one new thing where for $12, $8, or I guess when Netflix first came on, it was $8. You know, for $8, you could have so many movies and great shit that you don't even need your TV. You know, but now you need your $12 for Netflix, but then you got to have Disney Plus if you got kids, right? And then you got to have Hulu and you got to have HBO. And I think that's what's coming. And then eventually they're going to come to a point where they just say, hey, why are we all split off like this? Why don't we come up with deals? And it's not going to be everything on one, but you know, you can bundle HBO and you're already seeing it, right? You get Hulu, HBO, and all these things on one. And I think that's just kind of, it's almost just how markets work. They just, they get stale, they innovate, or they get stale. There's opportunity. Somebody innovates. Everybody sees that innovation, innovates themselves. And then it almost falls back to it and it gets stale again. Right. And I think that's what is going to happen eventually. And I don't think it's nefarious by any means. I just almost see that as the natural course of things.
Yeah.
Don't realize that the independents, like the Joe Rogan stuff that are trying to break that of just whatever you do. And I guess he's the worst example I could have used as a podcast. So he just went with Spotify, but anybody else. And maybe if you look at 6 months ago,
do you worry about Joe Rogan, to hop to Joe Rogan about him? He apologized the other day for something he said.
But I've listened to him for years. He always apologized. He when he makes mistakes and he feels bad about it, he apologizes.
He does apologize,
but I think that's what's endearing about them. I think that's what makes him so special. Is he is he says stuff and he's not afraid to speak his mind, because if he finds that he fucks up or somebody gives him another way to look at it.
Have you ever thought of doing shrooms and having a 5-hour podcast?
I haven't personally, but man, I have after that, because that was the fucking best podcast I'd heard in months. That 5-hour on mushrooms, man. He's just that guy can hit no foul balls. I swear, and I think that's just the 10,000 hours at that point, right? You stand on stage and do those kind of things for that long, you're gonna be on that level.
Yes and no. I would say yes. 10,000 hour rule is true. There, like he's done so much that he's smooth, but he has such an ability now that. Like he's woven himself into the fabric of our society now. Where that, I think 90, well, not 90, because that isn't true, but I mean, let's call it 20, 30% of North America would love to see the presidential debate moderated on a Joe Rogan podcast. For sure. And it would go nuts. It'd be awesome. I think it'd be phenomenal.
Yeah. It'd be so cool.
Like, think about having that reach, like as I sit here in Lloyd and you're sitting in GP and we're having a grand old time. Like his guest list that he gets to come on, I'm not saying it makes it easy on him, because that's not true. And that doesn't give credit to what he's done and how he genuinely interacts with people, and everything that comes out of that guy's brain at times. I'm like, man, that's pretty smart. Like I get what you're saying. Right.
Yeah.
But like his guest list now is like off the charts. Yeah. Even Miley Cyrus, I'm like, don't I want to listen to Miley Cyrus? Yeah. And then she gets on there and she sounds like her voice.
Sounds like she smoked a pack a day and a bottle of whiskey for 30 years, hey?
Well, and she pretty much has in her short lifetime, right? Like it was awesome. And I mean, like that's super cool too, right? Like his guests that he has come on are all top A, like bar none. And anyone you don't know, those are usually the best, because there's somebody who's been suggested and who is an up and comer, and they've been suggested. I'd love to see the process Joe goes through to like weed out his guest list. Like it's got to be unbelievable, because everyone and their dog wants to go on that show.
Changes your life, right? Like you look at that guy that wrote that book on Charles Manson and
that was a fascinating guy.
Yeah,
what was his name?
Oh, I can't remember his name, but he had put 20 years into that book. He got sued, and you could tell. And what I love more than anything, Shawn, is guys that get onto Joe Rogan that don't realize what has just happened to them, how big their life has changed. And it's funny because sometimes they'll say like, oh, people said my life is going to change on this. And you could hear him say like, well, I hope this book does well because this is just released and this is my whole life. I worked for 20 years on this. And Joe kind of just laughs and says, no, I think you'll do it all right. Right. And then it's just sold out. You can't get a copy of that book for anywhere because it just blows it up. And I think those are my favorite ones, when you see people walk in, they don't even realize what they just walked into yet. It's like, oh, wait till you walk out that door. Right. And something I wanted to go ahead.
I was just going to joke that I don't have that reach.
Yeah, no shit, me neither. Oh man, if I get one person coming up to you, if I could, I think I could still walk down my hometown Slave Lake and not get even a wave on half a days. But what's so special too about, you see an episode like on Miley Cyrus, for example, the amount of people and the types of people that I would never think give Joe Rogan a chance came up and said, "Holy man, I listened to Joe Rogan for the first time." Right, Miley Cyrus, it was so amazing. I said, "Yeah, like that's what it is." People just are so loath to give. I think that just happens when anything becomes popular. There's those contrarians that are just going to say it's no good for the sake of being a contrarian, right? But then you see them break through because that one person, or another big one like that was Robert Downey Jr., right? People that would never give Joe Rogan a chance, and Robert Downey Jr.'s on there, I'm going to give him a chance, and then they fall in, right? Oh, that was pretty enjoyable. So then maybe next time it's not somebody like a Robert Downey Jr. or Miley Cyrus, but it's kind of a medium where, I'd kind of like to listen to that, and I can maybe but the last one wasn't that bad, and that's why his growth, it's such scalable reach, right? It's growing at such an exponential rate. That's what I was going for, exponential, right? And it's so powerful. But the biggest thing behind that was he was never trying to, right? When he started with Red Band in 2009, they're just messing around, smoking weed in the green rooms, the comedy shows, and just having fun. And that's what I really I'm trying to bring into my pockets. I'm just not trying to make money, not trying to make it anything it isn't. Eventually I do want to turn it into something, and I want to try and grow it. And I do feel very passionate about what I can do. And I'm very confident in what I can take this to. I think that's maybe the biggest frustration, is just the patience I see what I want to make this into, and I just don't have the time or the resources to get it there yet, right? And it's so frustrating, but I think that's such a good lesson.
Fuck is patience a pain in the ass.
Oh, I know, man. Who has that? I just need to steal it from others. Fuck, I could use a double dose of patience right now. And that's the thing. It's hard to give your head a shake and realize you're only 3 months into this, right? And like, and that. So this is one of my questions I kind of had for you. But if you can put your mind back to when you were 3 months into your podcast, what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you were at that 3 month point? Because I think that would help me a lot.
I read a book. Never Split the Difference.
Right.
And it's about an FBI negotiator and his journey, and it's meant to be for, I think, I might be butchering this a little bit. I want to say it was meant for sales and like dealing with people one-on-one, but and this is why I go back to a book can mean so many different things to you. It even when you read it at 20 to 40, the perspective can change. Yeah. But he said in there, the art of listening is a superpower or something along that lines. And I have just, at the very beginning, I listened to every podcast I did. So I go back and re-listen to it. I was very critical of myself, and the number one thing I found, and I wanted to change in probably the first month, let alone 3 months, was that I talk too much. I personally talk too much. And in saying that, when I listen to like a Joe Rogan, or I've been on Mikey Dubs, shout out to Mikey Dubs if he ever listens to this, I was on his podcast, and like the rapport we had, where it's no different from what we're doing, where it goes back and forth, is enjoyable. It's a conversation. And one of the things let's say I had you on, and I had you on for the first time, I want my listeners to get to know you. So then they want you back for a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. And when I feel who's somebody Joe's had on like 6 times? One of the comedians had. Yeah, right. By the time they're at the 6th time, he doesn't have to introduce him anymore. Yeah. He doesn't have to go through that story of like the origin story. Because if you want it, you go back and you find it. Now let's just have some fun. Let's talk about some shit. Let's talk about the current stuff. And so right now, go back to my 3 month self. I'm still working on it every day. Is just to listen to what is being said to me by the people, because they're telling you about themselves, and that's what I'm after. I'm after like the nuggets, the lessons, the journeys, the funny stories, but just like and when I listen to them and ask them a follow-up question, and then they get it. Okay, and you can see their body, and that one came from being in person. Right. Over this, it's man, the Zoom. It's been cool because it's expanded my entire world, but it's difficult because I really enjoy being in the same room. But if I go back to my 3 month, I really focused on like really paying attention to what the guy said.
Yeah, and it's so funny to hear you say that, because that's the biggest thing I'm struggling with, is trying to listen and listen intently and not be worried about the next question and what I'm trying to do. And that is so funny to hear that. And the other biggest thing that I'm worried about is I talk too much. That's so funny to hear you say that, because that's my biggest issue. Is I'm a blabbermouth, and I think this has been a very well-rounded one where we both got our shots in and get our licks in. But there's been episodes where it feels like I'm just punching or speed bagging these guests with my ideas, and it's just going. And I think that's because I listened to. I got. This is all just me guessing at this stuff, but I think I felt, for those years of just listening to podcasts over and over and hearing these amazing conversations, hearing Joe Rogan have these amazing guests on, and I'm just so jealous. I want to be in there. I have so many ideas I want to get out there that now the first 20 podcasts, it's hard to keep my mouth shut, because I've wanted to start this podcast for years, right? And I just got the courage up to do it, but I have so much to get out and so many of those ideas. And I think that's exactly it. Not only is it the guests that you get the ideas out, but you get, if you want to discuss a big topic of how you feel about, spirituality or whatever, it's kind of a meaty one. You kind of got to say your whole piece on that. And then when you talk about it again with future guests, if that's your listenership understands where you come from. You don't need to take everything down to first principles again. You've already kind of laid that groundwork for your ideas on this one thing. And maybe somebody will listen to it and be a little bit confused by where it comes from. But if they want to do that, they can dig back into those podcasts, or maybe you can put it in the intro or the outro of, hey, if I kind of jumped into this subject, or sometimes I'll realize maybe I jumped into a subject without too much back and I throw a little thing in the intro for it. But I think that's funny to hear that you were struggling with the same thing, and it makes me feel a lot better, because I'm very impressed with what you do so far. And if you're having the same issues I'm having at 3 months, that means I'm on a good track here.
Well, once again, you're too kind. But I think I grew up, I got 3 older brothers and older sister. Mm-hmm. And so we all fight for airtime, right? Like we all want to talk, like we all have things to say, and it's I don't know, is human condition the right thing to say? That our brain, when you're saying something, my brain actively wants to rebuttal it, wants to say something about it, and to just try and quiet that down a little bit is a talent. It's a talent. And some days I got it like dialed in and I'm like amazing. And other days that's why I had to stop listening to myself, because some days I'm like really good and I can just tell, oh man, Other days I want to say something, and that's okay too, right? You're never going to be perfect. That's what's awesome about podcasts. It's never going to be perfect. You don't want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such a cool thing to look at too, is just, I forgot exactly where I was going with that. But something I did want to ask you about is the in-person style, because I think that was something that was holding me back for a really long time, Shawn. Was I heard so many podcasts, right? Joe Rogan he says it almost every podcast, like, oh, I hate Zoom. Zoom is the worst, in person's the way. But I was in Grand Prairie, and all my friends and most people I know are in Edmonton and in those areas.
Listen, Joe Rogan can say that, right?
Exactly.
People can say, you're going to hear things like, I don't know, fuck. Let's see some common things. One is, Zoom shit or whatever. And it's like, but I mean, you're in Grand Prairie, and for people who don't know, the world geographically where that is, you're not in a place that just gets tons of grade A people just rolling through. No offense, Grand Prairie. Yeah. I'm in Lloydminster. We have the same issue, right? Like we're a small, rural town, right? Like, and I mean, for me, it's a big city because I came from Hillmont, Saskatchewan, which believe me, you can't find on a map. And that's no slight at Hillmont. I love where I come from, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do to make it survive where you're at. And hopefully someday, 10 years down the road, 2 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you can look back and go, I was sitting in Grand Prairie. I was doing everything via Zoom, and that's the way I had to make it work. That's how I cut my teeth at the start. And now I get everybody in person. It's Joe fucking Rogan. The guy probably has he probably has some airline bringing him all the guests, hoping that he'll talk about the airline, right? Like that's where he's at. And so you can't compare yourself to other people. You got to compare yourself to where you're coming from, because that's the only way you can. And believe me, we all do it. I mean, wouldn't I love to be doing this full time? Sure. But no, man. Sorry. Now I just rattled on you.
No, that's all right. And actually, that's perfect. Because while you rattled, I remember the other thing I was going to say. But just to finish this point before I go back to it was, So I felt really restricted that I couldn't start a podcast because the in-person aspect wouldn't be there. But then COVID happened, and as much as it was not a blessing in any way, and it was a lot of stress, and oil hitting the shitter was not a fun time, and there was so much stress that. In no way was that the time I should have started a podcast, was in the middle of all this. I had so much extra stress, right? It was the number one time not to, but it was the one time I'd have an excuse to do Zoom over in person, and gave me the time to figure out my setup. Because, in my basement right now, I have the inklings of the starting of my setup for my in-person, right? And I'm going to set it up at my parents' place in Edmonton, hopefully, and get a little bit of an in-person studio so I can make a mixture. So during the week, I can have people on like this, but then I can book a few episodes on a weekend, head to the city, do in person like that. And that's something I'm really excited for, because, and I've done one in-person interview, actually. Alex McKendry, he's a local guy from Grand Prairie here, actually grew up in Ontario, but he played a couple games of the show, got called up, scored his first NHL goal in the playoffs for the Islanders when they won the cup in, I think, 79-80, got a cup ring with the Islanders. Salty earth, wicked guy, and he came over to the house and we actually recorded in person. And just like what you said, I think I became scared of it, Shawn, because I think I did my first. He was maybe episode like 19 or something, and I had done 18 episodes up to that point on this, and I got comfortable with this, and I started to get scared of doing it in person, right? Where before I was so down about not being able to do it in person, then I finally did it, and I realized that it was scaring me, and I said, oh, fuck, anytime something scares you got to go right at it. So I said, okay, I'm booking this interview. I'm going to do it in person. He's going to come over to the house. And just like you say, the in-person, that it's so much different. And I was hoping that I kept, and making the analogy, I hope this Zoom stuff is like running with ankle weights. And then when I get the in-person set up, it's like taking those off and I'm sprinting at that point. Right. And it was so cool to feel that. And that was where I wanted to ask you, how was that for you to start with the in-person and then for COVID to hit and have to switch gears into, you don't want to give up on your dream. You don't want to stop having the fun you're having with your podcast, but then have to transition that to a different medium. How did that experience go for you? And how did you get through those kind of struggles?
I'm trying to remember who my first Zoom was. And I can't remember right now. Not that it matters overly, but I remember being disappointed. Like, you got to understand, in my brain, my core philosophy was, I'm not doing this at the very beginning. I'm not doing this, I'm doing it in the hopes that eventually it goes big. No different kind of what you say.
Yeah.
But I get an emotional high from talking to people. And when you have a really good conversation, I get a really good emotional high.
Tell me about it.
Right. And so
it's the reason I do this. It's amazing.
I wanted to do that with people around the Lloyd area, probably no different than you being around Grand Prairie or your hometown, or, you get something set up in Edmonton, like those things, to have the people come in and sit down and it's awesome. There's no substitute for it at all. Yeah. But after I did my first Zoom interview, I remember thinking distinctly, like, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as I made it out to be.
Right.
And, now all of my, I would say all of my success that people view as success that's come, if you're not if you don't know the local guests I've sat down with, right? You see Tanner Bozer come on. That's all been accessible by doing it like this. And it was a good lesson for me to learn, actually, that, don't get set in your ways, because it's not a race. It's a very long marathon or a journey or whatever we want to call it. Like it's just not, Ron McLean, for instance, it wasn't like I had Ron McLean on.
By the way. Oh, amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I loved it, man.
Well, it wasn't like I did Ron McLean and then things went off the Richter scale. And if I go further back, I remember the first guy I did was Paul Bissonnette. I did.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And,
listen to that one as well.
In Phoenix. That's the first time I'd ever done it. And I was scared shitless because I'm like, what if it doesn't work? Right.
Yeah.
And, going back to these guests, right? Like if there's been one thing I've learned in the first 100, and now even more so now, I guess, is that I haven't, and maybe this is a personal thing. It's been very popular, but it wasn't like all of a sudden. I always hear the saying like 10 years to make an overnight success, right?
Yeah.
Well, I had Ron McLean on, and the money truck didn't back up to the door, bust it down, and dump him. Right? It's just it's a cool name. He was a lot of fun. I hope to have Ron on again.
Yeah.
But it didn't. If you want Ron, you can find him in 100 million places, and that was a lesson.
He's a nice fucking guy.
Yeah. Oh, so smooth, man. He truly super cool guy, and like willing to go where my brain wanted to go that day, which was interesting, right? Like it's he's a super cool guy, and the podcast in general, I mean, once again, has been super cool with just expanding that. But to go back to your original question, the Zoom thing, I had an idea, and honestly, once I got done it, I was like, it just wasn't that bad, which really surprised me.
And I think that's just another tool in your toolbox now, is you know that you prefer the in-person, you get certain things out of them, but now you can start expanding and getting better at your Zoom interviews. So then when that opportunity does pop up, right? Because now imagine you never would have done any Zoom interviews, and now a huge guy. Wayne Gretzky wants to do a podcast with you, but it's your first time doing Zoom, and now that you have all those extra fears. But now, when those opportunities come, you're prepared for them because you were forced into doing them, right? Like it's
the VonDubCast calls, says, "Hey, I want to do a Zoom." I go, "What is Zoom?" I go, "Yeah, absolutely. Take me 2 seconds to set this up. All right, let's rock and roll."
Yeah. So one thing I want to just tell you my little Ron McLean story. So we're at an Oiler game. Huge Oiler fan. Loved listening to the first roundtable with your brothers. They're talking Oiler talk. I might have to listen to the rest of them too. That was one of the ones I really enjoyed. But so we're at an Oiler game. We're lucky enough. We're sitting in the box for this game, and me and my buddy, and we're pumped, and we're listening to Old Cannon, and we're standing there. And one of my favorite jokes. It's a running bit all the time, but I don't know why I get so much joy out of this. But when you see somebody that looks like someone famous, someone you know, oh look, there's Buddy Boy, right? So my buddy Chase, he bumps me and he goes, "Hey, look, Ron McLean's in the box beside us." Like just joking, we both laugh, kind of giggle, but it's O'Cannon. And I look over, holy fuck, no, that's Ron McLean. Holy shit! And so we're all kind of buzzing and stuff, and we're all cool, kind of taking our little pictures, looking down and stuff, and then 5 minutes later, I turn around and Ron's in our box taking pictures of it, talking to everybody. He just, being the guy he is, he saw that we wanted to do, so he hops over the railing, like a spry little young 20-year-old he is inside, and just is mingling with everybody, taking pictures. Just the nicest, salty earth guy. It was just so cool to have that. Of just, I don't think I even got my picture. I think I was too starstruck to even talk to him at that point. Me and Chase were both just clamming up and sweating off our faces, but it was so cool.
You understand why he's so good, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard of anyone have an interaction with the guy that isn't memorable or isn't like, man, he's so impressive, right? And not like so walks around with an air. Like he's just so personable. Yeah. And his memory is, man, I'd love to have that. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. That's everyone. One thing that people have kept coming up to me and saying about the podcast since I released it is like, man, you have such a good memory. And I'm thinking, every time someone asks me, I'm like, I feel like I have the worst memory of all time. I just listen to so much content that I just, every once in a while, I'm bound to remember something from it. You listen to 1,000 episodes of Joe Rogan at 3 hours a piece, you're going to remember something out of there, but I don't think it's a very good memory. But just to get back to the question that popped up earlier that I forgot, but is kind of what I'm really interested in is, I heard you mention that, some interviews, and this is very much for myself too, so I'm kind of speaking for me, but also asking this of you. Some episodes are different than others of how much you can get into that mode of listening and not thinking about your next one and almost get into that flow state. And what I've been really experimenting in these first 25 episodes is, what do I have to do my day to make sure I'm in that zone every time I go into a podcast? And I've learned some hard lessons with that. I've gotten cocky sometimes. I'm thinking I'm really on a high and I don't put in the work of all those things, right? I didn't do my meditation. I didn't get my questions right. I didn't do, it's just going back to hockey. You don't do your ritual. And I saw the consequences, and I've been beating myself up. I did an interview yesterday, but it was the first interview since I did one that I wasn't happy. It was still a good interview. I think people that listen, I think I'm just hard on myself, but I knew personally it wasn't up to stuff, and I didn't do those things. And I've been beating myself up for a week, and there was a week in between that recording and my next one, and I was beating myself that whole week. So I'm just kind of curious. Do you find that, and do you have a certain set schedule of things you want to do in a day? Do you have a certain prep that you do to get yourself in the right mindset for recording?
Okay, so first off, I used to love having the pregame routine, everything. Listen, I have 3 kids, 4 and under. How many times am I going to tell people that? Like, it's. I try and do as much prep work as I can. So if the guy, if the guy's written a book, I want to read the book because he's basically laying out the groundworks for what you can talk about in his book, right? Like, I mean,
for sure.
It essentially, even when sometimes Joe's as busy as can be, right? But sometimes when he hasn't read the book, I'm surprised. I'm like, Joe, you should probably read that, right? Like, I don't know. But then again, you're on a different level, and what the hell do I know? And I'm sure Joe does exactly what you just said, and fuck, I dropped the ball on that. Yeah. And when you say cocky, absolutely. There's times where I'm like, I got this. And then you blow it, or you feel like you blow it. I shouldn't say you blow it, because it's not exactly true, but you could have given more to it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I've, for like a ritual of trying to, these certain things got to happen so this can be good. I don't even have time to think about it, to be honest. Yeah. My brain is consumed with is consumed with get up, get my work done, make sure I spend time with my kids and my wife, because I don't want this, as much fun as it is for me, I don't want it to become where I'm not. You mentioned a good word right off the very hop of this, a balance. I don't want it to be ever where it's tilted so far that all I do is podcast and not focus on the other sides of your life. Because if that ever happens, right, and my kids grow up with never me around, or let's go down the worst case scenario train, right, and I get a divorce or something really, really bad, then the podcast can be as good as it wants to be, but I'm not going to be having fun with it anymore, because what makes it fun is that my life is in a really good spot, and then it's like the cherry on the top.
Yeah.
And so
look at it.
I guess to answer your question, I don't have a routine. I try and do as much research. There's nothing that can replace good research on anyone. In fairness to yourself, I wish I could have listened to all of your episodes, so I could have walked in and been like, okay, this is who I'm talking to. This is what he's about. Blah, 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 blah. Because I don't I like knowing a lot about the other person, right? It's very comforting, I guess, to me to fall back on that. I think of, are you a football guy?
Yeah, not as hockey's my big sport, but I love football too.
I'm a hockey sport guy too. It's one of the old coaches for Indianapolis said you fall back on your level of preparation, I believe. I believe that's the guy who said it, right? Podcasting is the same bloody thing. You can have a list of a million questions, but if you haven't done the research or just read up on it a bit, a question can kind of seem hollow. And if you get stuck, you fall back to where your knowledge is. And so if if all you're doing is, okay, then you read the next question, I mean, it's not gonna be that much fun for either side. At least I don't think.
Yeah. Or
I don't know.
It rings hollow, right? When it's not an impassioned question, when there's not the soul behind it, it rings hollow, right? And people don't connect with it. It's not that feeling of you just went for a ride for 2 hours. Now, if somebody's not connected and there's a piece of it that's not harmonious, it's right off the hop. You can smell it right from the start. And I think that's a really big piece of it. And maybe just being a big hockey guy that you are, do you see any other parallels between podcasting and hockey, maybe apart from the preparation that you've seen kind of along this process of things that you learned from hockey that you've transferred over to this?
One word comes to mind: consistency.
Yeah.
And my listeners have been great, because when I first started in February 2019, I said, listen, the only thing I'm going to guarantee you is that I'll be consistent. I'm going to release an episode every Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I got to Christmas time. So I did that for all of 2019. And I got to Christmas, and I was in my wife's from Minnesota. So we went to Minnesota for Christmas. And I believe, you'd have to check me on this, but I believe Christmas was on a Wednesday. So December 25th is a Wednesday. Yeah. And I was kind of like, there's no point in putting one out, right? And I'm going to be on holidays. And then we were going to Phoenix, and, there's no point, right? Like, I might as well just take 2 weeks off. It'll be good. And I got called out for that, like, hard. Yeah. Like, I got to work Christmas Day. I'd like to listen to you while I'm driving to work. And I went, okay. And that's how I got Paul Bissonnette, right? Like, is just by going to Arizona with my podcast gear, and we'll see if this works. And so being consistent, I'm not sitting here saying that, once again, the Brink truck backs up and dumps off a load of money. But by being consistent, people know what to expect. And anytime I've approached any decision of like, well, now I'm releasing every Monday, Wednesday, and actually every second Friday for up until Christmas time.
Wow. Is
I look at that like, I'm not going to try this out for a week and just kind of feel it out, because I want people to know when they tune in to me that if it's that day, he means it's that day, and it's going to be that day for the rest of, the foreseeable future. But like, I don't know, a consistency to me is something in hockey they preach, and it reaps rewards, and it is very translatable over to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. And you hear Joe Rogan talk about that. That's the number one thing he's always preaches is consistency. It's for a podcast or for anything, right? And it even goes back to that preparation, right? It's all about that grind. if you put that effort in, it's all about effort and just giving everything 100%. It sounds so cliche and so silly, but it's almost just more elegant ways to say it, and consistency and all those things. It's just about being there every time and making sure that you're there for them. And that's so funny to be called out on something like that. And I think maybe that's another thing I can ask you about. I use this podcast as a bit of accountability for myself in a lot of ways, and things that if I say it on here, it makes me, it's a different level of, you have to hold yourself to it. Do you?
Because now you got people who just heard you.
Exactly. Right. And that was the thing that I thought one of the big moments when I first decided to start the podcast was just to just release one episode where you say, if anybody listens to this, if you see me at any time, it could be 50 years from now, and I don't have a podcast still, you shout me down in the street, right? Make it so I'm so accountable to never give up on this dream and to always carry it through, that if anybody hears, I almost was thinking about putting that at the end of every podcast, that you're always held to that level of consistency where you can never give up. Not only will you never want to give up, and I love it so much, I can't imagine a situation where I'd want to give up on it, but like you just have that added level. And I just thought that was kind of cool. And I never ended up doing it, but it's just one of those things that I thought was cool. And I've used it in other ways for accountability. And I just wondered, have you used your podcast as a form of accountability in any ways yet?
You
sound like a pretty accountable guy to begin with, so maybe you don't need it. I think I'm still working on
that. I gotta say this. I'm not, I would say in most of my life, I haven't been the structured type of guy that everything's like drawn out and these things got to happen each day and blah, 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 blah. The thing with the podcast is it kind of steered the ship for me. So I get what you're saying. I get 100% what you're saying is it has held me accountable every single week since I started, because I need an episode out, which means I have to line that up, which means I need to do this, which means I have to do that. It's interesting how much it's integrated it into my life. Even my kids now say, "Dad, you go to work?" "No." "You go to the podcast?" Like,
yeah.
No, I'm home. But the cool thing about like holding yourself accountable for 50 years, like, man, that's extreme. But the thing is what I'm taking from you is that you enjoy it. And I hope what I let off is, man, I enjoy it. And I didn't think I'd find something for me that I enjoyed as much as playing hockey. And so what scared me for the last 4 or 5 years is I'm 34. And so every year that goes by, I was still playing senior hockey up until this year. And so every year that went by, I was kind of checking the watch going, I wonder how many more years I can play senior, because I love it. But this is something you can do. You truly could do for 50 more years. And as long as you can get up and breathe and walk to the studio and plunk your butt down, away you go again.
Yeah, that's so amazing to hear you say it. It seems like half the time you've been talking, it almost feels like I'm talking in a mirror. You're just saying exactly what I feel about my podcast. And something that I heard you say earlier, and it was actually the first time I heard it put that way, was kind of the emotional high after a good podcast, and then after a really great podcast, that emotional high. I think that was something I was very unprepared for. I don't think I ever thought that would be. I feel like I enjoyed podcasts, and I knew I would enjoy it in the moment, but I didn't realize after. Like, there's times where, if I'm honest, after a good podcast, I'll be buzzing around the house, jumping around, dancing, and driving my girlfriend. And that's because I'm going but it's that emotional high of just like, oh, that was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. I got so much out of it. I learned so much about myself. I really think my guests enjoyed it and they had fun. And that's part of it. I feel like what dictates that emotional high is, for me anyways, how my sense of how the guests had their time. If I feel like a guest really enjoyed it and had fun, because I feel like part of it is asking these guests on, I feel so guilty. I have this huge, I'm a really nice guy and I hate bugging people. And, if someone's going to give me their time, I want them to have an amazing time, because I have so much fun. I want them to have just as much fun with this as I do. So when I see that and I see that someone's, laughing and having a good time, they get off, man, that was so much fun. I'd love to do that again. I get so high off that and I'm just buzzing around. And was that something that you kind of, because it sounds like that was something that you kind of knew going into it, and that was something that you had kind of drawn on maybe, but I was completely blown away by it. I must have expected to some degree, but definitely not to the degree that once I first felt it, it was wild.
A good podcast or a bad podcast can pretty much make or break my days.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a little insight because it hasn't happened yet, but tomorrow morning it's supposed to. But something I operate around is if we'll use Tim McCall from Tim and Sid.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to hop on 2 mornings ago, and he is the first guy who ghosted me. Not like ghosted it. If Tim ever listens to this, well, I'm going to bug him tomorrow. So he got busy. He got whatever. It just didn't work out. And that was like depressing to me because I'd like ramped up to the point where, like I'm ready to go. Like let's do this. I'm excited. And then it didn't happen. And it's now like 7:30 in the morning, and I've been up since 5 in the morning, getting things ready. Yeah. And he was a total class act, apologized, whatever. So we're doing it tomorrow morning. So I'm super excited for it. But that high of like tomorrow when it's done, assuming it goes well, will carry me through the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And him not coming on dropped me for the rest of the day. Like I just couldn't get out of the funk. And and even his nice words, I'm like, yeah, I know. Frick. I was excited to talk to you. Right.
I have the exact same story.
But I would say it's maybe for me and you, maybe it's part of our temperament. Cause I got a brother, Dustin, who, he's been on the podcast a few times. He's in the roundtables, obviously.
Yeah.
But we biked Canada when we were young. And so we did a podcast where it's myself, Dustin, and then the girl that came with us, Lori. Mm-hmm. And when we got finished that, I tell you, I could have partied all night and not had to have a drink or a substance in me. I was just, and he was tired. He was like, man, that's just draining. Like, it's fun. I'm just tired. I just need to go home. And I just pick steam up off these things.
Yeah. And it's so funny to hear you say, because I had a very similar experience. I think I was maybe like 5 or 6 episodes in, and I just released the first batch because what I wanted to do, I was so that consistency thing was something that I had always heard preached. That was something I never want to not have an episode. Then that's something if I ever don't have one in the bank, I get antsy because I need to have that next episode. I'd never want to have a Monday hit and not have an episode. Very similar to you. So I just released the first couple. I recorded 5 episodes before I launched it. I had 3 to launch off start. The one I did with my sister, one I did with her fiance, and then one my sister came back and actually interviewed me on the 3rd episode, just kind of asked me what I wanted to start about it. And then I had recorded 2 more with buddies. So I had those 5 and I'm still working on those. But when I released the first 3, somebody at work had come up to me and they said, oh, I really like your podcast. And I was listening to another podcast and this guy was on, his name's David Akinnon. And he's from Venezuela and he worked on Wall Street and he worked for Google and now he's in Africa doing all this stuff. And I was just blown away. Oh, that sounds awesome. She said, I actually reached out to him because he said at the end, if anybody wants to, have him on anything else, open. Yeah. So she said, I reached out to him and actually see if he'd be okay to come on your podcast. I was blown away by that. Like, holy shit, someone's doing that for me already. Like that was just such a cool experience. And, I reached out to him and he said, yeah. So I started researching this guy, Shawn, and I'm going deep. He had done a TED Talk. I read every blog he had put out. I watched these movies about Africa that he had kind of said were good. I did research for days. I was just up day and night getting ready because I was so excited for this episode. And it was coming up. I think let's say it was a Wednesday and, Tuesday comes and I'm trying to double check. Okay, you still good for tomorrow? Does not hear nothing, not here. And then the day comes up and didn't hear nothing. That exactly that feeling. I was so upset. I was so excited for it and so motivated. I'd done so much research. I had so many, I could have interviewed him for 12 hours. I had so many questions lined up for him. And like you say, it's hard to get out of that funk, and it was kind of, just, I'm sure he got busy and all that, but just didn't happen. I felt so terrible. It still sucks.
The thing is, you can just, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying because you invested time of your life into like, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be fun. This is a big deal to me. Whether it's a big deal to him or not is beside the point. Like to you and to me, something like that, that's never going to go away. I'm sure if you're sitting on Sports Center right now and you got, or Joe Rogan, let's use Joe again. you got Donald Trump says he wants to come on, and then it never happens. I'm sure that it's just the scalability of where you're at, right? That sucks. I tell you what, the second word I would use on what I've learned from the podcast, I use consistency first. The second one is persistence. Yeah. Not ferocious in the way of like, I'm going to come bust your door down and drag you to the podcast studio, but I just don't take silence. I take silence as busy. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to keep texting you then, or I'm going to keep, and I'm not going to be belligerent about it where it's like 1,000 texts in a day, but yeah, that not getting back, fuck, that's frustrating. And there's nothing you can do about it. That has nothing to do with you. That's all to do with the guest, the individual, maybe where they're at, maybe something happened. But
that's exactly what had happened. He was working in Namibia in Africa, right? He's just an amazing individual. I can't speak highly enough of what this guy's doing, but an opportunity came up where they could go build a school up in these mountains, and there's no cell service, and he kind of just had to take it. And eventually he got one email through. I think the email couldn't even send. It was just the subject line of "In the mountains, we'll get back to you. So sorry, like still want to do it." And it was just like, it was that feeling like, okay, that's great, because I was never mad about it.
Isn't that crazy how one thing can take you from like, I'm in the bottom of valleys to the peak of the mountains. Like it's
exactly.
Once again, it's such a weird human quality.
Oh, I know. And then so it gets better, Shawn. So then we line it up. We finally get the day. It's because of the time difference we did it. So I had to take time off of work, and this is the first time. So I was so stressed because I get so guilty about taking time off work to record the podcast.
I want to know, you've done this?
Yeah, so I recorded it with him one of these days. So then we go forward and we have this amazing interview, Shawn. We talk for like 3.5 hours. He's everything I hoped he would be and more. Just so intelligent and so stuck on his path and just wants to change the world. And he's so impressive, right? And I'm just on cloud nine, exactly like the most highest emotional high that I've ever had. But that emotional roller coaster going through losing it and getting it and stuff. And then I was so flustered about it. I brought my book with me, this book where I write down my questions all the time. I brought it to work with me just to go over the questions because I was so nervous. I wanted it to be so perfect. I left it at fucking work. So I get home. So I'm in a fluster, and it turns out to be amazing, right? But it was so emotionally draining. I got this emotional high, and then we get off, and I'm so
I shouldn't laugh at your pain, but dude, I forgot my computer coming here tonight. I told you to start, right? That shit happens all the time.
But it gets better, Shawn. So we finish up this 3.5 hour interview. It's just everything I hoped for, and I'm so thankful that he's there. He goes, hopping off, right? That Zencaster show, the one we're recording.
I'm going to be honest. You're killing me right now. Are you about to tell me you deleted it or anything? Because I swear, if that's how this story ends, we might just have to stop. You're killing me inside.
Just let me get there. Just let it breathe. Let it breathe. So we finish this interview, and he goes, so I can click out of this Zencaster. I say, yeah, it's all good. And he goes, are you sure it's telling me like it's not recorded? And I was like, yeah, no, it's fine. Cause I've done probably 7 or 8. I'll have to look what episode that was, but I've done a couple, so I'm just feeling confident. Yeah, no, you can do it. So he hops off and he hops off, and it says download incomplete. So I had my side of it, but I lost his, and I was depressed. And he had gone to, so the time, so he had gone to bed, I didn't realize it. So I run off to work because I'm so busy. That was what I was trying to do. I run off to work, and I get home, and something just didn't feel right. So I run to my computer and I go, I just want to make sure I got it because it was so good. I just got to make sure. And sure enough, his side's not there. And I've never felt like my stomach, I wanted to puke, and not even because I lost the interview, because I felt so bad because he had given me his time, and I just sat him there for 3.5 hours to do it, and I felt awful. So I write this paragraph of just apology. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did this. And he was the nice guy. Don't worry about it and all this stuff. So, and I know he's in bed, so he's not going to get this for the morning. So I'm just thinking about it. My brain's going of just how bad this guy's going to think I'm an idiot, and he just gave me all his time and all this stuff. But it turns out in the morning I contacted Zencaster. They were great. They had a this happens all the time. They have like cloud backups that they sent me, and I got the thing, and I got the episode released, but it was such an emotion. Like I've never been so up and so down and then so up and so down throughout so many things for that stupid goddamn episode. And it was so, and I learned so much about myself, and it was just a great interview that really kind of set me on this path. I think.
What interview is it? What number?
David Akinnon. I'd have to look it up on.
I'm going to look it up now. You got me super curious. So I guess I know what I'm doing tomorrow. You want to know
exactly?
You know who Quick Dick McDick is?
Quick Dick McDick. I don't. Who's that?
Oh, you've never seen Quick Dick McDick? Really?
I don't think I have. I feel like I would remember that.
YouTube Quick Dick McDick Protester's Diet. It's got like, I don't know, 500,000 views now, something like that. He's a small farm town guy from Tufnell, Saskatchewan. He's hilarious.
Nice.
He's hilarious. I did an interview with him exactly like you're saying and didn't record a single stitch of it. So then he's actually been back on the show. He's done 2 more episodes. So we've actually talked 3 times, but the first conversation is gone. So don't feel bad. I'm glad you got it because I thought for sure you're about to tell me like, yeah, and I didn't even get it. I'm like, fuck.
No, I got it.
We've all made them.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing. And I don't know why I was so upset about it, because in listening to so many hours of podcasts, every podcaster I love has told that exact story. Every podcaster has that story of losing that or not recording, or you look up in the red lights.
It'll never happen to me. It'll never happen to me.
It'll never happen to me. Oh, that's that. But just all the things around it and just how terrible I felt. It was such a thing. But yeah, no, got it. It's episode 12. People go listen to it. It's one of my personal favorites. I don't know how connecting it'll be to other people, but for me, it was a super awesome episode just for everything tied to it. And I felt like just the more I researched and the more I was connecting with him, just so many things that he stood for and so many values, right? A very similar experience to, I think, lining up this interview with you and then listening to, I probably listened to maybe 6 or 7 episodes from the time we agreed to the time we sat down here, just to hear more and more and to do that research, to get more and more confident that, oh, I'm really excited for this episode because I know we're going to connect really well. Because like you said, I probably listened to, 10, 12 hours of well, maybe not that much, but let's just say 8 hours of you talking, right? It's maybe a little pretentious to say, but I felt like I got to know you a little bit even before we got to hop on here, right? And just that feeling, it's so exciting to get more questions. Oh, I got to ask him about that. Oh, I got to ask him about that. And, and you build it up. It's such a cool experience that when you get to do something like this, it's built up even further, right? And I think that's what the nice payoff is about that hard work that you put in, that grind to do that research, because you connect and you can. And I think that's what I was really excited about, to do an episode with a fellow podcaster, because you have that basis. If you're going to have a guest on, that's the number one thing. If you're going to do research, you'd hope that they have is a podcast that's long form, so you can really get to know who they are on a deeper level, right? And then you're laughing to go into that interview. You almost don't need questions because you know who that person is, right? And you know where you can go and where you don't want to go, and all those kinds of things. So, yeah, no, that was a fun experience, but I learned so much from it. And
I feel for you even over here. I'm sure you tell that story to any podcaster, and they're just going to be like, oh. Please tell me you got the audio file at least, right? Yeah. Like it's the starting a podcast and the things you learn you never thought you'd ever learn about is it's a steep hill, man. And I don't know. Take it from if we're in the same boat and I'm just a little further ahead of you, I'm still learning lessons every single day.
Yeah. So then. What would you say? And it's hard to say. This is a tough question to ask, but what are the goal for your podcast? Where do you see it wanting to go? And I know it's kind of tough because it's it makes you kind of have to force yourself to dream and think a little big. But where do you want to see the podcast? In a couple of years, and then long term, if everything went right, where do you see you doing? Is that what you do full time? And what is you expand it to? What does it look like?
I would say this first off. I don't think that question you have to feel bad about asking. But don't feel bad about asking me any question. This is just me personally. You can ask me anything. And secondly, I don't think it's bad to have a plan. I think without a plan, you're not even throwing darts at a dartboard, because that gives you direction, right? You're just kind of rudderless. And so I think a goal is a very good thing to have set. And so for me, I eventually want to do this full time. That is where I want to be. Now, the only thing, and I joke around all the time, like I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't sit here and say in 2 years' time that's going to happen. In 5 years' time that's going to happen. In 6 months that's going to happen, right? All I know is that I still really enjoy doing it. And if I'm consistent and consistently get better and have good guests come on and people enjoy it, I just continue to see it growing. I just can't see when that time comes that I can leap over the hurdle of, wow, I can do this full time. And now you can't see it, but on my wall, can you read that? So
my little things are says, whatever time you have, attack like you're trying to save the world. Joe Rogan, that's fucking awesome.
So Joe Rogan has an episode with this lady, and he hasn't read her book, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
But she asks him about how people get stuck in life. And Joe Rogan has this kind of 3-minute speech about, they get stuck because they have bills and they got kids and they got things and and it just hits me right here, right? It hits me right in the heart because I'd love nothing more than to do this full time. But the truth of the matter is I got 3 kids, got a wife, got a house payment, got things going on, and I love this. And if it can someday provide, then that's why I do it, or that's why I'm not afraid of the work, I guess, right? Anything you want in life, you got to work for. And so I'd love to see it become full-time. And if it becomes full-time and you get to focus all your energy on it, I feel like I could do some really cool things with it. But for the time being, over the next, you're asking what's the goal for the next couple of years and maybe 5 years is I just want to continue to perfect what I do so that when you hear me talk, I had the nicest compliment I think I've heard. I've had a couple of good ones, but the one that hit me was a guy from Wainwright emailed me and said, I've been meaning to reach out, but this last episode really put you over the top. And it was one I did with Judy Reeves, who survived the perfect storm. And he just said it was the most Joe Rogan-esque thing. It was like I was listening to Joe Rogan. And I don't want to be Joe Rogan, but I want to be Joe Rogan-esque, where when you listen to it, it's that good a conversation, that quality, that wow, I don't want to get out of the truck right now. I want to see where this is going, right? That's what I want.
Yeah.
And if it gets to that point, it's probably providing for myself and my family, and the enjoyment's still going to be there because I enjoy the hell out of this, right? I enjoy the hell out of talking to you. I've enjoyed, it's been really, honestly, I was curious to see how this was going to go because I get asked the odd time to go on people's podcasts, but it's not like every second day I get asked to go on. So it's cool to be on the opposite side and have to answer some questions and talk about some things. But that's a long answer to what you're asking about. My goals are, I just want to keep growing it. And eventually I want it to be where it's full time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very much is very in line with what my goals are for this podcast as well. And in hearing you say that in getting stuck and having those bills, and that was something that was very conscious in my decision to do this now and to not wait, is to do this and get it at least on its feet enough so that I'm not withheld, because I didn't want to get to that point where I was wishing I would have tried it, and maybe I would be too scared to take that risk once you have a couple kids or a wife or whatever else it is past a mortgage. I mean that's one thing you can change, but a kid, there's nothing you can do about that. You got to be there, right? And that's something that I definitely want kids, and that's something I want to do. But in going through this process, I just realized how much growth I've gone through just in the last 3 months, and just how much more I need to grow before I'm ready for that. And I think this has almost accelerated my own personal growth. Just forcing myself into a project like this has forced me to grow in so many ways, and that is almost what I needed to become what I need to be before I become a father. And I think that's something that has always been in my mind, because that's
a pretty cool little statement there.
Yeah, and it's just something that it's kind of, it feels silly to say it out loud sometimes, but that's always been something that's been part of me, and I always loved kids, and I always knew that I feel like I'm going to be a great father one day, but just I'm not there yet, and I have a lot of work to do, and just to see. But it adds another layer of like you say, when you're saying the work for the podcast, it is a lot of work, but it doesn't matter because you enjoy it so much. But you can almost do that with life, and thinking of all this work of working on myself. It's hard work, and trying to be better yourself. It's hard work. But when you have a goal in mind of being a good father one day, that makes all that work worth it, right? Because you know what your why is, you know what you're working towards, right? And if you have bigger goals like that in life that you can bring, then you can, not just the podcast, not just work, everything you're doing, you're always trying to make yourself better for some goal, right? And it's not just to be a good father, it's to be a good podcaster, it's to be a good whatever you want to call it, a good manager at work. That those things are what you want to work on. And if you keep those whys established in your brain, you can do much more things than if you're just doing it because that's the paycheck at the end of the day, right? That's why you're doing those things. When you have a real powerful why behind it, it comes through in the actual content itself. People can feel that. If you're doing something for a paycheck, people can feel it. But if you're doing something because you absolutely love it and it's what makes you happy, people feel that just as powerfully, right? that same detector we all have for bullshit and for people that are full of it. We have that the other way when someone's really genuine and someone is coming from a place of purity and honesty like that. You can feel it too, and that comes through on the episodes. And I think that's the biggest piece of Joe Rogan and what makes him so successful is I feel people can feel that with him, right? And all the offshoots and the other big guys that are in that. I feel like that is something that I've seen with all these. I've listened to so many podcasts and so many different people that I admire having podcasts, and I always look for the common threads from them. And then from the guests that they have on, right? That's what got me into meditation. That's what got me into breath work, was just seeing too many really people I really highly respect talking about something. I've got to give it a shot, because now if 30, really high IQ, really smart people talk about transcendental meditation, I'm doing myself a disservice by not at least
acknowledging it and giving it a try.
Yeah. And now, and we're getting pretty close to 9, or we're already past 9. So maybe I'll just wrap it up with one more question here. I don't want to keep you here all night, but just, you've had over 120 episodes with some pretty special people. What are some of the common threads maybe that you've seen in those people coming through your studio there on the Zoom that maybe you've brought into yourself? And what do you see in these guys like Ron McLean and Jay On, right? There's always common threads with these powerful people of what they do. And maybe what are those, some of those that you've picked up on?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the common things is enjoying what you do.
Yeah.
Because there's no, I've heard it probably said to me a lot by the guys that you just mentioned and similar types that are on like network TV, that kind of thing, that you need to be yourself. You need to be genuine. And you can't fake that.
Yeah.
And that is one thing, that's, I think they all learned early at some point with to just be themselves, and you're either going to like it or you're not, right? Yeah. Like, you're either going to tune into this and enjoy it, or I think you said it right off the hop, or you're going to flick on to, ballerinas, or you're going to flip on to some comedy podcast or whatever. So I think being yourself is definitely a common thread.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is a common thread is you got to work hard.
For sure.
I don't think, I get irritated when Michelle Obama starts a podcast, not because I'm sure I'm going to like it. I just go like, I wish Michelle Obama had a podcast for 12 years and earned it. And that's no knock on Michelle Obama. I'm sure she's a lovely lady, but she just, if you're famous and you start a podcast, you already have that following. Now, maybe they had to work for it, and I'm, that's just me being, whatever the word is on irritable when it comes to things like that. But when you see what you're doing and how you're just yourself, on how you're having to like work through it and stumble and pick yourself back up and deal with the emotional roller coaster that it is. That's a cool thread amongst podcasters, because people who started out like that and didn't just walk in and just talk to cool people because they can. That's a really cool thread, amongst I think all of us, that we all have to. It's a learning curve. We got to work our bags off. We got to do a bunch of things, and we got to earn it. And then at the end of the day, you still don't know if anything's going to really happen, because hell, maybe people don't want to tune into you. Maybe your voice sucks. Maybe you got some habit that you don't realize and nobody will tell you about. I don't freaking know. And that's life. And so I would say, go back to it, work hard, be yourself, and enjoy the shit out of it. Because if you lose the enjoyment, man, then it turns into work, and
now you're back at square one of what you're trying to get away from in the first place, right?
That's right.
And if I can just try to, I think I can take all three of those points you made and kind of put them into one, because I think you're so on the money with that. It's about being yourself. But I think what people struggle with sometimes is, even when they think they're trying to put the effort in to be themselves, I think sometimes people don't know who they are, and it comes off they're trying their best to be who they are, but they don't know who they are themselves. They haven't done enough work to open up and to get in touch with those parts of themselves that they've been denying and kind of hiding for a long time. And I think that's what comes through, and especially with famous people, because I think lots of times, depending on what you're famous for, you have to shut down certain parts of yourself and put on an act, right? If you're an actor,
you're playing a part.
you're playing a part, and it's hard to get in. Not to say all actors aren't in touch with themselves, but I think a lot of the time you see people that try and jump into it, and they just use Michelle Obama as an example, and I never listened to it, so I can't say if this is true, but if she was playing a part and putting that, if she tries to put that out in this medium of honesty, it will ring through disingenuous, and it won't, and it fails. And you see these people that try, whether they're famous or not famous, but if they try and go on and they don't know themselves enough to bring that out on the podcast, it doesn't succeed, and it hits these roadblocks, and they give up on it. And I think the people that are true to themselves and honest enough with themselves to be themselves on their podcast, those are the people that can stick with it, because then it's enjoyable. Then it feels like, whether that's good, bad, or ugly, or people like it or not, it doesn't matter, because I had fun and I enjoyed it, and it was true to who I am, right? And I feel like that's what the disingenuous that rings true of all these things, right? And then on top of that, you have to have the effort. But I think you need to have that combination of that honesty, and that true honesty, and that effort, because you can work your bag off as hard as you can, but if you're putting on an act and you're just throwing bricks around from one side to the other, you're not actually accomplishing anything. You're not building anything, right? Because you have no sense of direction. You have no.
Well, I feel like a lot, and I could be wrong on this. And I should point out, I shouldn't have thrown out Michelle Obama, because I'm like insulting Mother Teresa, right? Like the lady is awesome. I'm sure her podcast is fantastic. All I was meaning by it is if your name is, well, take Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Yeah. If he started a podcast tomorrow, it would be, right? Like it'd be over the moon. He'd probably be signed by Spotify for $100 million. Like, and he's worked his bag off to get to that point, to be able to transition into another industry. But when it's your industry, when you're the podcaster watching this, you're like, and that stings, because I watch other people and how much hard work they're putting in. And I'm like, hopefully someday I can transition from podcasting into something else and have that like pull,
Yeah,
like it's crazy. But
I think that's the great equalizer, Shawn, in my head, because I firmly believe that if The Rock started a podcast right now, it'd be huge. It'd be ginormous. But if he couldn't find it within himself to be genuinely honest, which I think is a hard time, because you can't be that famous and be that open. And I think that's something that is very unique to Joe Rogan right now, is there's nobody at his level of stardom and just worldwide popularity, but also to be that. Everybody knows him. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of his deepest times on mushrooms or on whatever else, of him, emotion, of him crying, of all these things. You let that stuff out. That's a whole different ballgame than The Rock of, acting these things. And I feel like, not to say The Rock couldn't do it, but I think that's going to take some time. And I bet you it would be a huge hit off the start, and it would go down, down, down. And if he stuck with it, I'm sure it would come up, and he would find himself and find his own. But I think that's inescapable. I think if you try and levy your past popularity, you better be, being honest and being true to who you are when you go on that podcast, because that only gives you, I think it's I'll use this analogy maybe. What Joe Rogan always says about famous people in comedy, right? You get 5 minutes. And then the crowd said, no, you got to be fine. I'll give you 5 minutes of being, I think that holds true so much in podcasts, because podcasts are the great equalizer. If you're going to do over an hour and genuinely and not all edited to all shit, the truth's going to come out. And if you're being phony, it's going to come out. And I think that's
a very good point.
So guys like me and you that are coming in here, and our goal is to be honest, and that's our only goal, right? The money and all that stuff secondary to being honest and having fun. I think that's what rings true. And those are the ones that'll gain popularity. Like you say, you still got to grind, you still got to do all those things, and it still could take you 30 years to get there. But eventually you will, as long as you stick with it. Where if you're on the other side, it doesn't matter how much popularity and stuff you have coming into it, whatever, you could have rocket booster strapped to you. You're still going to fail if you don't put that real piece together.
Imagine going back 3 months for you, and I'll go back a year and a bit, to a time when you're sitting down for your first podcast. But let's say you didn't have to worry about setting the computer up and anything, and everything's set up for you. You got this beautiful studio. Did the nerves go away? Did trying to figure out how to run a podcast conversation go away? Not a chance. And I'm still trying to figure some of that stuff out, and still trying to, and that'll never, so you're bang on there, because if The Rock started tomorrow, don't get me wrong, he wouldn't be afraid of a mic. I mean, he lives in front of one, but the ability to probably quiet his voice and listen to people would be tough. Can you imagine The Rock sitting there and listening to, it's Oprah is, I've listened to a bunch of Oprah's, what was it? She was interviewing a bunch of like super famous people, and it was in an audiobook. And so I downloaded it. I was like, geez, this sounds like super cool, right? Like Oprah's like one of the best interviewers of all time, interviewing like super famous people. I couldn't get over how much she talked. And I was just like, no, Oprah, if I wanted, like, and in my brain, I was going like, if I wanted to hear about Oprah, I'm going to look for an Oprah interview, somebody interviewing Oprah, not Oprah, you know? And it was crazy to me. And I actually turned it off because it just turned me off. And I remember my wife going, yeah, but Oprah is a pretty smart lady. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but she's talking about like physics. Like she's done it. And I'm like, she's not. She's you know, and I'm not saying she hasn't read books on it and stuff, but it was a good lesson for me. And I think, you know, you go back to if somebody transitions into it, you're right. There's lessons that we all have to learn when you hop on the side of the mic and try and do it like long term. It's a lot of fun, but the learning never stops.
No, never. And that's what's so exciting for me. I get excited about learning the next step and just always getting better and just see the actual improvements. And then what makes it all worth it for me, Shawn, and maybe we'll end on this because I think you'll probably feel this as well. But as soon as the first real genuine message of someone really connecting with what you're trying to say and really getting what you're trying to do, and them reach out and just a small paragraph of just saying, hey, I really enjoyed this episode for this thing. Like I've been feeling, you know, one of the first ones was one of my first episodes I had my sister on. I was talking a lot about postpartum and these things I've learned.
I know it kind of took a turn there. I was like, oh,
yeah, exactly. But I had recent mothers reach out to me and just, hey, I really didn't know those stuff, and I felt really alone in some of these thoughts, and that was exactly what I was hearing on this podcast. That's why I wanted to get it out there, because it is such an important thing. And when I listened to these podcasts and really experientially felt these feelings, or not felt the feelings, but heard these stories of these people feeling these feelings and feeling so lonely in them, that I feel like it's important. It's my duty to, you know, spread that as much as possible. But then those genuine people that are connecting with what you're trying to do and say it in such a nice way and give you that boost of support, the nice messages are worth everything, right? If I never make a dime on this podcast and I just live off of the kind words,
compliments,
that is so much more worth it than any dollar amount you could, you know. I'd turn down I'd turn down the Joe Rogan deal from Spotify for just the comments.
Nobody's turning down the Joe Rogan deal.
Yeah, but short of that, I think nothing would overtop those comments and what that does for you. And I imagine you probably feel a bit of the same way, hey?
Well, 100%. I say it to everybody who ever reaches out and says, you know, like, this episode really got me, or I can't believe this, or you do a good job, or whatever it is. Those are that fuel the beast on the worst days, right? Like, and the beast being me, right? Like, gets me back going if I'm having a down day or whatever. I will say this though. Me and Quick Dick, you should look up Quick Dick, because Quick Dick and me had a discussion about he doesn't want to be a sellout, right? He's a old farmer, not an old guy by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got this huge beard and he's just a comedian. He's a wicked dude, like wicked dude. Salt of the earth, to steal your words. And me and him, I got bantering on with him about ad placement, because he does this thing on this one with a bottle of Fourth Meridian beer, which is Lloyd. And he goes, I get harassed about that all the time. It's ad placement. And he goes, no, I don't do that. I'm not a sellout. Like, I don't do that. I go, and this is where my head's at. I go, just because you take money to help sustain your passion and your dream doesn't make you a sellout. And I firmly believe that. So just because it isn't Joe Rogan money doesn't mean you shouldn't take some money to do it. I mean, unless I would put this caveat in there, unless they're giving you money so they can control how your message goes out. I think that's where I get off the train. I don't want to, I want to be able to do it how I want to do it and talk about things I want to talk about. If I want to swear, I want to swear. And if I want to talk about what's going on in whatever part of the world, I want to be able to talk about it. I don't want to have like you say, you know, like the earpiece in. Shawn, could you move off that topic, please?
Yeah. Move along. Yeah, that's the biggest piece. And I think that's what everyone was scared about with Rogan. But I think anybody that's listened to Rogan for any length of time knows that that's not who he is. And his constitution is more than any amount of $1 million. He's had money for a long time. And that's so not what drives him. And I was never scared for a moment. Now these people trying to muck up stories about, there's strikes going on at Spotify because they want to control this kind of, that's such bullshit. Nobody actually thinks that.
I bet you there's a couple people that think that way. I guarantee it. But at the end of the day, anytime you take that amount of money, that's a lot of money. And I would assume if you're Joe, you had that contract looked over and basically said, listen, like, I'm going to do drugs in the studio. Yeah, we don't care. Yeah. I'm going to do drugs in the studio. Yeah, we don't care. Okay, just so we're clear here, right? Like, I'm going to get some offside crap being in here. I'm going to talk about, because that, like, there was a guy in Winnipeg, and this has probably happened all over the country, not just Winnipeg, but he was a popular radio host, talked about transgender people, and got let go. But like, Joe Rogan talks about it all. That's what you love about him, right? Like, there's no, you want to go any which way, let's go. Yeah. And that's pretty cool. And that is unheard of in media. That's why podcasting, it's so open, it's so free. You can talk about anything. And if you get the right people talking about it, it's pretty common sense, which is enjoyable too.
Yeah. I feel like that's the biggest piece, Shawn. You nailed it right on the head. Is common sense is gone from the world in almost anywhere but podcasts. It's the only time you can see people, reasonability and nuance, and that is on podcasts. And podcasts maybe tooting our own horns, but I think anything long form. I think anytime where people, it's not just 30-second clips or whatever it is, even half-hour TV shows with a bunch of commercial breaks in the middle. It's got to be something long form where you just have your thoughts and their thoughts and limited time to expand on it. And if you kind of fumbled something, you didn't say it right, you can go back and I didn't really mean it that way and all that. And the thing that, because I value that same thing in Joe and his willingness to talk about any subject and go wherever the conversation needs to go. And that's what I want this podcast to be. And I see that in your podcast as well. You have to be willing to take whatever comes with that. Right. And I think that was the biggest thing that am working on currently, is just having that faith in yourself that you are a good person, and any subject, no matter how hot button it is, that you're coming from it from a good place and you're not ever trying to cause anybody harm. And I think that probably Joe Rogan said that at some point. I probably got it from him, but I think that's such a powerful place to go to, because now you have the freedom. You're not worried about it. It's not, it doesn't matter if your executive producer is okay with the segment. Are you okay with that segment? Yeah. Okay, then that's fine. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Yeah. And that's what you connect with, is that itself. And I think that's what's going to make podcasts the next wave of media in the 21st century. It's
already happening. It's already happening.
Yeah. People just need to get on board. And that's another piece of it. I almost feel like I was feeling that. And I feel like Slave Lake and my community was getting left behind, because I didn't see a lot of my friends from home listening to podcasts. Maybe I can start one, and maybe they won't stick with me forever, but maybe that'll get them on to Joe Rogan. Maybe that'll get them on to, an Aubrey Marcus, or any of those people that are going to change their life. And that's what they're going to connect with, and just bring them into this medium and just showing the power of what long form can do, whether that's me or, like we said, there's a billion different podcasts with these little niches, but just getting you into the format itself is so powerful, right?
Shout out to Dan Carlin, who will never,
Dan fucking Carlin.
Fuck me. That guy. Oh, he is good. I'm listening to Jordan Peterson right now. He's fantastic. Yeah. Like, there's you just go back to it. If you search any topic you want to know about, there is so many podcasts on it. It hurts your brain. And I agree with you. Lloyd was the same way. My hometown, right? Just a little bit behind the curve on the podcasting, but it's ramping up, man. And if it's ramping up in Lloyd, it's full blown everywhere else.
Yeah, and if a guy like you or a guy like me helps that community get onto the front edge, where maybe of all the smaller communities, hey, no, we're up on par. Slave Lake is a pretty forward place, or a Lloyd is a pretty forward place, because one person like yourself decided to dig in and make it and create a beacon for that community to see this format. And I think that's what's so special. And you get to highlight those people from your community, right? Like, one of my favorite episodes, I had Chad Paulson. He started Dog Island Breweries out of Slave, an amazing brewery. They make the best beer. Holy shit. If you're ever in Slave, you got to try it. Or actually, it's all right now.
It sounds like the next podcast we're having is happening probably in Edmonton or Slave, and you're bringing me some beer, because that sounds fantastic.
And I think we could probably do a whole 3 hours just on Dan Carlin and hearing you. I heard you talk about those other podcasts. I think we could go deep on that, and I'd love to dive into it tonight. But I already kept you over time here. I had an awesome time with you. I couldn't, in listening to every episode I listened, I got more and more confident that this was going to be a really a really fun conversation that we connect really well. We didn't even get to talk fucking Oilers. I wanted to go deep. I wanted to talk my boy Yamo, all this shit. But that just means we got to do this again because I think we could probably do a couple more hours. But like I said, I was getting more and more confident that we connect and have a lot to talk about. And I just can't say thank you enough for, giving a small guy like me a shot to come on and have a bullshit with you.
Oh, man. No, thanks for inviting me. I'm giving you a shot, if that's the way we're going to call it. Other people give me shots all the time. Yep. So, no, I appreciate you asking and anytime. It's been a lot of fun and best of luck with it and keep grinding.
Thanks. Sounds good. Have a great night, eh?
Yeah, you too.
All right, there's one more episode in the books. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Once again, if you give my Instagram and Twitter pages for the VonDubCast a follow, that really helps. If you think someone would like this podcast, please, word of mouth is the biggest ways that podcasts get started and get shared around. So if you know someone, pass it on. See if you can help me get another loyal follower on this journey. I'd really appreciate that. Like I said in the intro, I'm starting to look for sponsorships. Calgary, Edmonton, Slave Lake, Grand Prairie. Those are kind of the main areas that I'm focused on because that's where I have the most listeners currently. Just can't wait to keep trying to find new guests and bigger guests and keep growing this thing and growing my skills as an interviewer and just having fun with it. So thanks everybody for being along with that ride with me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.